Eddie, how you doing?
Good, good. I'm really excited for this. A can of worms, I guess I've been wanting to open for a long time. So I'm glad that you guys are giving me the opportunity to do it here.
Well, I'm glad you offered. I feel almost like an Oprah. So tell me, Eddie, what is a woman?
What is a woman?
So, all joking aside, I'm very happy that you reached out because we have noticed that there's very few public voices from Marxists in general, men Marxists in particular. And since they're technically supposed to be materialists, we found it noteworthy. There's a few who I call unicorns. So Alexander McKay from the Marx Engels Institute, and also Garrett Ramirez, a social populist, and Nick Dury, who will say it publicly, not just in whispers. And we realize, of course, that it's not an easy thing to talk about, that people can get canceled and pronoun mobbed. So I feel like I know you, though, because I played a very bit part in the whole Danny Shaw thing. I want a bit part in the Bad Lebowski, and if the Coen brothers ever kind of do a remake. Okay, so Eddie Liger, this is what I know about you. He is a member, maybe a founding member of Midwestern Marx, and he's also on the executive board of the American Communist Party, which is not yet a year old, although it seems like it's been a wild ride. And Marxist-Leninist, I think, is how you would identify in terms of the Marxist pantheon. And so, yeah, Eddie reached out, said he would like to come on because he was ready to talk more openly about this. So, Eddie, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate your guys' show here. I watch it quite often, especially once you started having Alex McKay on. I like the name of the show, Morbid Symptoms, too, because I think it's perfect. Like, there are some idealist tendencies on the left that have become entrenched dogmas that we're not allowed to challenge that lead to all sorts of other idealism and mistakes in our strategy. So I think it's a great show.
So, Eddie, let's get into it. Let's talk about your gender journey. What's changed? Why do you want to talk about this out in the open now?
Well, because I'm in the process of becoming a woman, so I wanted to
transitioning. There's a lot of money in gender identity. That's why I call it gender, because it is an industry. Do you remember it was a couple of weeks ago, there was some feminist Marxist, at least nominally, who was all up in my grill about calling it an industry. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
No one calls it an industry. That's stupid. I'm like, oh, really? It's not an industry. Why don't you explain to me how gender hasn't become an industry? Of all the things to come at me from a Marxist to get irritated about a communist symbol in her bio, how is this not an industry? Like that was the controversial part of that statement. The industry, of course, sustains itself by promoting the narrative that gender identity is central to personal fulfillment and societal progress. It's not the money. That's just a happy coinkydink. All the money and all the jobs and all the careers and all the virtue signaling and all this, that, and whatever. That's just, don't look at that. That's just secondary.
No. Right.
It's really about
the will.
Yes. And that's especially where the advocacy and the media comes in. Kamala Harris writing Dylan Mulvaney a letter on his 1 year of girlhood, living authentically.
Oh, God. Seems to be such a headache, that guy.
So there's conflicts of interest because you have the financial and institutional incentives raise questions about whether the promotion of gender ideology and all the stuff that follows from it serves actually these poor people who have these, I don't even know, what should I call it? Unique. Okay, let me think about my words here. So it serves those who have these minority gender identities, or if it serves the industry itself.
Right.
So all the activist organizations advocating now for so-called gender identity rights are receiving significant funding from donors, often channeling these resources into lobbying, legal battles, and public quote-unquote awareness campaigns. Public awareness sounds fantastic, But are you raising my awareness, or are you indoctrinating or gaslighting me?
It's not like telling people not to leave their pets in the car in summer, right? Which is, like awareness. That's helpful. But telling impressionable young people who all seem to be on some kinds of meds anyways for their anxiety or depression or ADHD, or telling these kids that, oh, well, you might be feeling sad because you're born in the wrong body, that's total indoctrination.
Yeah, they haven't been able to articulate or to specify their particular gender identity. That's the problem. So many of these organizations partner with corporations for visibility, funding, and to push so-called diversity initiatives that, of course, include gender identity as a key component. Let's remember that what gender identity means in practice is that we go along as if there are male women and female women and male men and female men. So undermining or blurring what used to be common sense and clearly defined girl, boy, man, woman. So now there's us unintentional, just born this way women. And then there's the male women who have something called a woman gender identity that is not measurable or objectively determined or anything like that. It's basically a claim. And since these unicorns have this claim very insistently, this becomes something that we should, affirm and recognize and incorporate.
Yes,
That's
respect.
what goes on. And I only know this because my awareness has been raised.
Totally.
We cannot protect women and girls from harmful sex discrimination, invasions of their sexual privacy, and sex-based violence against women and girls if sex is judicially redefined to mean an amorphous continuum of subjectively felt genders that may not relate to sex at all. Further, we are clear about our sex. Listen, boys. And listen, everybody. We are female human beings. This recognition is demonstrably more accurate than notions from the framework of so-called gender identity. In fact, not a single one of us has a gender identity at all. Do you have a gender identity, Tanya?
I don't, but sometimes I've toyed with the idea of having something really cool, maverick, renegade gender, hey? Because they actually exist. There's websites and there's 300 and you can pick. And you can change as much as you want. Why do I have to be a boring middle-aged? Why can't I be a renegade gender? How fun is that?
Yeah. And all the accoutrements, like your birthstone, you can have your gender stone. I love Daniel. He's good for the comedy.
My father actually says this shit. The fact he has absorbed this nonsense just indicates to me that Trumpism is now pure mockery. I think it's over.
Who types to their dad, happy election day with an exclamation point?
To generate content.
Same to you. May the commies lose. Go Trump. And he tweets later.
My dad sent me a photo of him and his girlfriend both wearing trash bags at a polling place. He wrote, "Trash wins." So yeah, I think culture war identity politics was a catastrophic mistake all around.
Do you, Daniel? You're the dude who will say trans women are women. And if Tut for these guys, Tut would say that these are women, but identity politics all around. Daniel, please take a seat. He's trying to cover his bases now. He sees which way the winds are blowing. Oh, everybody was guilty of identity politics. To quote Zizek at him, he lacks the language to be able to articulate his particular form of unfreedom.
Why is that man wearing a skirt?
Emperor's new skirt.
Was he a United
Well,
States?
one's a trans woman and one's a non-binary. And one's a she, her now. And even though he has a wife and kids, we all know that what makes a woman is putting on a woman outfit.
Even the pantyhose. I mean,
James transphobe, shush. Anyway.
Grandpa dressing like that. Like, what the heck?
I have to dig into him because he thinks I'm a fascist transphobe because I'm not a sex denialist. And I don't think it's empowering for there to be male women. I love that I was able to say, did you explain to him that Trump is a father of the horde figure and does tweets that make sex mimics cry? So I wrote back, your dad sounds based. Someone I could have a beer with. I bet he knows there's no such thing as male women. I'm Team Daddy Tut. I'm all King Dad Tut.
Posting your L's.
Hey, man, I'm sure that next Delusian reading group you have will really build bridges. Maybe RFK is right. Maybe there's been like a considered effort to reduce the testosterone.
There must be.
And Alex
Have you been
Jones.
tested, Gary? What's your T level?
Toxic.
What's your masculinity level? Is it toxic, Anthony, or is it just right?
I think it's fully toxic from how I'm being perceived by people.
I love Daniel. He's good for the comedy, but not intentionally.
I was just thinking maybe science would have something to say about having your genitals rearranged surgically.
Because it's reducing distress. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're dysphoric, which means unhappy about
Right.
your female body, if you're a woman, or your male body if you're a man, or you have a bad feeling. And so what they're doing is reducing that bad feeling, ergo it must be somehow good, scientific, etc.
You know what? I
And
have a friend who's a wound care nurse of like 30 years. She's a total pro. She's nice to the gender people, but she was telling me that she sees a lot of young women who've had the surgery who come in peeing like out of 4 places because of their
of
rupture.
course,
So I guess feeling sad is worse than peeing out of 4 places.
and
Don't
we
feel
know a
sad.
common problem for the guys. So guys, tuck, don't cut. Because a lot of the guys who go through the bottom surgery complain of anal leakage. So apparently the lining, I don't know, between the perineum and where the poop comes out of, there's seepage. So your fake vagina smells like poop.
Right.
Poop has never come out of my vagina.
God. Can you imagine? The boys
3
who've
babies
had,
have,
who've
but
had the puberty blockers, so they have micro penises, so their penises never grow to adult length. So they don't have enough tissue to make a Franken-vag, so they have to use part of the colon, and that also smells bad. At least
Yeah.
they're not feeling sad at night, right?
Yeah,
At least
they're
they're not dysphoric.
it's a
That's
different, you're not worried about that anymore. You're worried about infections and
Thank
weird
you, science.
smells and having to dilate. Anyway, but fortunately,
Right.
most men who claim that they're women don't go in for the full package, the full gender kit. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your patience while I worked out my issues. And welcome. I want to say Zhang, but how should I say your name?
It's Xiangyu.
Xiangyu.
Yeah, just pretend the X is like as an SH, because
So
it's not an
Xiangyu.
SH, because in Chinese the SH makes a sh
Yeah.
sound. So that's why it's
Yeah,
an
Xiangyu.
X.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Xiangyu?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes. No, you're good. It's not an easy name
Anyway.
to.
Well, I just anyway. So, welcome everyone to the Morbid Symptoms podcast. I'm your host Tara Van Dyke, and I'm very happy this is our second episode of Marxist Men coming out of the gender closet. And what we mean by that is that it's been difficult. Us, what we've been called TERFs, so us people who, are grounded in biological reality and have always been critical and concerned about gender ideology and how all of a sudden there were two types of men and two types of women. So female women, accidental women like myself, and then, special male women and whatnot. And realizing, since Marxists in particular are supposed to be materialists, I was a bit like, well, I wonder what, none of the Marxists seem to be saying much about this. And then realizing, of course, because it came at a cost. So, cancellation culture and witch hunts and being called a transphobe and a Nazi and all this stuff tends to have a quieting effect on discourse. But anyway, Eddie Liger came on last week from Midwestern Marx and ACP. And there's been a few others on my show who are Marxists, men Marxists who say this publicly, not just in whispers, because we do get a lot of that. People be like, yeah, this is crazy, but I can't, I can't say anything because and we realize that there are risks and not everybody has the economic situation or the personality to be able to withstand the avalanche of big sister gender speak that will come at you if you dare to say what 10 years ago was obvious. But anyway, enough about that. Now I have to think. Xiangyu.
Yeah, Xiangyu. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, you see now with the Xiaohongshu becoming big, X, the Chinese platform that starts with an X, and also with the Chinese president Xi Jinping also having an X in his name. Hopefully, more people will realize that the X is a sh sound, just kind of like how people see a J in Spanish names and know it makes a h sound. It's a slow process, but I think over time people.
Well, unfortunately, and I know it like I know it in my mind, and then when I say it, sometimes all of a sudden I get. Yeah, because I did spend a year in Shanghai a long time ago, a whole other life.
Right.
But yeah, so I'll do my best. I'll think Xiangyu. Anyway.
Yeah.
This show is not about me getting your name right. Although hope springs eternal.
You can just call me Hey You.
Well, I don't. Oh, please don't patronize my my white privilege. Because I remember. Sorry, before we have you introduce yourself. My job, I was in Shanghai for a year and I worked for Microsoft as a communications specialist, basically a cultural imperialist, because my job was, I had a group of engineers, Chinese engineers, and my job was to help them, teach them soft skills and Western customer service expectations. And I would listen in, or that was my job. Go ahead.
So what you're saying is if you were there today, your job would be to teach them about introducing their pronouns and all of that.
Yeah, probably. But I'll tell you, it was, this was before, this was right. I had a master's, I had a bachelor's degree and I wanted to travel around, but I didn't have any money. So I worked around and I realized that my, I'm not going to lie, my language and my skin color was helpful. Anyway, but my job was, I had a team and I would literally listen in on their phone conversations when they were doing technical support. Or before their emails went between them to a customer or client, I had to proof it. So it was very Big Brother-ish. But I mentioned this because with the pronunciation, all of them had to take English names. And they were actively encouraged not to make it obvious that they weren't American or Canadian or whatever. And even if people would ask, they were trying to, so they would have names like, Bobby Smith or,
even the last names.
Every once in a while they want to name. Yeah. So
That's
when I was there,
ridiculous.
I think that's
I
changed.
understand like westernized
Mm,
first name because admittedly our given names are not
mm,
easy to pronounce, but like last names,
mm.
like surnames, that's wow.
This was back in 2001, so it could have very
Mm,
well changed.
mm,
But and they were all like, no, and they would and they but it was so that they were like they would be able to pick their name. Isn't that nice?
yes.
But we would have to like approve it if they were new hires or something. And
Mhm.
so of course sometimes people pick names you're just like trying to be like, well, like one lady wanted to be called Cherry Lee. And I'm like,
Uh,
maybe let's not call it Cherry. You know? And she liked cherries and it was cool, but I
mhm.
was like, but I didn't really realize it at the time that it was, it was kind of, looking back now, I wish I had the kind of Marxist and sociological imagination that I have since developed because I would have, I would have paid a different type of attention to what I was seeing around me the year I was there. But anyway, I mention this because everything was made easy for us that I never really had
Mhm.
to get the pronunciation down. But
Right, right.
anyway, if you would please, Xiangyu,
Xiangyu.
tell our audience a little bit about yourself before we
So I
get
think
into the.
yeah. So Tara here explained it pretty well in her introduction to this episode. I am a political commentator. I am also a independent artist over here in Taiwan. Been doing hip hop over here since I was a teenager, mostly in the underground. Was nominated in 2018, and I decided it was a platform where I could share my anti-imperialist message to a broader audience over here in Taiwan because I feel like it's what people over here needed to hear. And one thing led to another, and towards the end of the 2010s, my music was shared among Western communists, including self-described communists, if you know what I mean. So I became kind of a little bit
Identified.
more yeah, a little bit more known in the Western sphere because before then it's like nobody in the West knew about my music. I never intended for hip hop in Chinese to become relevant at all in the West because I just don't think it's really meant to be. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, because
Mm,
like I said, my primary audience was over here in Taiwan spreading an anti-imperialist message because over here people are indoctrinated from a very young age into believing like you know we are part of the free world that is de facto led by the United States of America. And I just wanted to challenge that narrative because
mm,
ever since I was a teenager I started doing a lot of independent study that led me to a different conclusion. Now
mm,
over time I gained a little bit more relevance, I guess, in the West because there's not many voices on the ground in Taiwan that can talk about the Taiwan question in regards to, Sino-US relations, cross-strait politics between
mm,
Taiwan and the Chinese mainland from a
mm,
pro-reunification anti-imperialist perspective. Most of the voices you'll hear in the English language are what the US State Department or the incumbent party right now, the Democratic Progressive Party, wants you to hear. So that's kind of where I
mm,
found my niche. And of course, being involved in these circles online, at first you realize, okay, so there are these rules to this game. If I want people to keep on listening to what I have to say about Taiwan, I should probably, keep certain views to myself.
mm,
You know where that is going. But then over time, it's like at some point they're still going to out you as a so-called turf if you
mm,
aren't 100% on board with whatever it is
mm,
pushing. They
mm,
say things like, you know, it used to be sex was a material and gender is a social construct. So if gender is a
mhm,
social construct, then with so many different countries in the world with different cultures and civilizational
mm,
backgrounds, you'd think
mhm,
that different civilizations have make different sense of the fact that humans are divided into two sexes broadly, male and female. Of course,
mhm,
there are exceptions, chromosomal mutations and irregularities, kind of like how some people are born with 11 fingers or 9 fingers instead of
mm,
10. but we still broadly say that humans have 2 legs, have 2 arms, 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 eyes, 1 nose.
Mhm.
You know, of course, there's always going to be exceptions.
Yeah, and
But-
if I could just pause you for a second there,
Yeah, go ahead.
because and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I've been turfing for a long time. Even what you're talking about, if I think it's about these DSRs, there's people who have developmental issues with their sexual reproductive system.
Yes.
But even those, even people who have an extra X or an extra Y or 2 or whatever, they're still male or female. There's no third sex or somebody who can't be categorized. Sometimes it takes more of an effort depending on what the development issue is that they have.
Yes.
You know, especially but this idea, because the genderists want to put that out. That's why they want to force team not just with LGB, but with intersex, which is a general name for these DSR conditions, is because they want to see, well, look, there's these people. It's like, yeah, even though, and just like you said, even though this happens, everybody, as far as we know, both now and as far back as we can go, is male or female. But yeah, there are, like you said, you can be more, you know, just like with your one, you know, have an extra toe or minus a toe. Right. It doesn't mean that you're, you know, a different, you're out of the human category. So I just want to make that clear, because that's a common big sister propaganda thing.
They push this narrative that, like, the idea that humans are divided into 2 sexes is something that was pushed by Western imperialism. That's what these, like, pseudo Marxists nowadays go by. But what I see in front of my eyes now is their version of gender politics, their understanding of gender is pushed all throughout the world through NGOs. So if anything, if gender is a social construct, should you not allow every single culture to make sense of this reality on their own terms, instead of through these NGOs that's forcing everybody to accept it? So they're putting everything backwards. You're saying, oh, our views are the, you know, the pro-diversity, it's the one that respects the various cultural differences, when in fact they are the ones that are enforcing cultural hegemony. So that always seemed very odd to me, you know? And
oh no, you can't shake a stick without hitting a major contradiction whenever you're getting into this conversation. That's why they have to get so mad all the time and call you names, because it's easy to get them into a place you're like, you know.
And
I remember there was
if it is a social construct, if it is a social construct, then we should have the right to discuss these things and ask questions. But I realized anybody who even people who just innocently ask questions are just, it's like they're dogpiled by like wild attack dogs. That's what it seems like. Like whenever,
Oh yeah, well, I think to make a lesson out of it, like see what happens, because who wants to go through that? Who wants to be run out of their university job for saying, you know, you can call yourself what you want and dress how you like, but you're not, doesn't make you a woman, you know?
Right.
Oh my God. It was just like, and then you're like a transphobe and a sex apartheidist. And it was the most amazing thing I have ever lived through. And I have been opposed to Israeli Zionist policies in Palestine since 2002. And this was a whole other load of fish. It was mental. It was crazy. It still is, I think. But sorry, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you.
No, we're just here to have a conversation. So I appreciate understanding all these things.
I just
ideas back and forth, you know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I just have to know myself, and I love to, you know, I'm especially since I'm been working at home now for such a long time. Whenever I get to have an adult conversation, I'm just like, gotta try to pull myself back. Anyway,
well, it shows you are
it's also
about what you talk about.
Well, you're lovely, and I have to say you have a wonderful voice. So I'm not surprised. I mean, I did check out a couple of your videos, and people in the video description. Not yet on, I don't know if I add it to the X one, but on both YouTube and Rumble, there's a link to his website, and you can see his various activities. But also, like, you know, you could do voiceover work. But again. So I want to start off with first is what was kind of the, if you can remember, because I'm trying to think about how we progressed with Eddie as well. Do you remember the first time when you really were taken aback about this gender stuff and you thought, this is, there's something dark or whatever adjective you want to use. Can you remember when you realized like seems very different than LGB?
Well, I mean, the first time I heard of the idea that sex is material and gender is a social construct must have been when I was 14 or 15 from a history teacher. And I guess that sort of made sense to me, like, as you know, gender as in, okay, you are born a female, but society expects you to have long hair, for example. So I accepted
Yeah,
that.
norms and stereotypes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
norms and stereotypes. And
Yeah.
some norms and stereotypes, I guess, can be harmful for both the men and women of society. Some, I guess, are just tradition that are neither good or bad, but just are. And some, I
And
guess,
some are actually accurate.
yes. I mean,
They'll really get
I
us for
do think,
that.
I do think that women being the ones who are able to become pregnant and have children are by nature, in general, there's going to be exceptions. There's always exceptions. There's going to be some crazy
Don't
people
worry
who are.
about. You can speak clearly to me. You don't have to you don't have to disclaim and qualify.
No, I know.
unless you want
Like,
to.
yeah, are naturally going to be
We're
more
so used to
inclined
being
to
like,
have,
"Oh."
yeah, to have motherly characteristics, and perhaps this is why a lot of teachers of young children are women instead of men, right? I guess this could be some sort of like something that goes along with social expectations or socialization of women. But then I remember when I
I
was
think it's
in
a
college.
patriarchal plot.
Oh, okay, got me
No,
there.
but yeah,
I'm
what
a
you're
big.
getting at is that there's like when we're, and all we can do both in language and when we're trying to study things is you look for patterns, you look for generalities, realizing there's
Right.
always exceptions. Now,
Exactly.
the issue is when you have the exceptions, are they being criminalized when they shouldn't be, or demonized when they shouldn't be, or unnecessarily constricting, or maybe the
Exactly.
boundary between the exception and the rule needs to be looked at? All fine. And like you said, a huge geographical and historical difference there, and material as well. And that's I think basically what we're getting at when we say that these norms and stereotypes are not all conspiracy theories to keep women down and men from getting in touch with their feelings. There's other stuff involved in that, I would say.
What became a little bit odd was when I was in college, at some point, the women's studies department became the gender studies department. Right. So, but like to me in the past, I always thought of like the issue of like women's issues and whatever. They seem to me like a subset of like social sciences. Right. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just that sort of shift. And during my freshman year, we needed like general credits for, like one of the things was like cultural. I forgot the term that they use, but it's you need a credits and all the
Cultural
other
studies or
classes.
cultural, yeah.
Basically that, yeah. So then all the other classes that I tried to apply for, well, there weren't that many availabilities because as a freshman, it was really difficult to get the classes you wanted. So I saw one availability. It was women's studies. So out of curiosity, I guess that's what I applied for. And of course, my friends were kind of teasing me about it, but it was whatever. Going in, having these discussions,
Well, it's going to be
professor,
a
I
great
guess.
dating strategy, actually.
Actually, yeah, because I was like, I think I was the only straight guy in the class. Like, it was a
That's the
small
thing. If
class of
you're
15
straight,
people.
yeah, straight guys in gender and women's studies classes. I mean, you could, and that doesn't mean that I mean, to be totally cynical, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Anyway, go
and
ahead.
I don't know, it was over there. I was just introduced to different concepts. Like in the past, I guess we just had the understanding that things like sexual exploitation, the sex trade is bad. But then here we are in a women's studies class, and I guess what's good is the professor showed us different sides of the argument. It wasn't just like,
Mm,
this is my view and you are to believe it. To this day, I really don't know what the professor's views
mm,
about this particular topic are. But then it's like
mhm,
you're in a women's studies class. It's like, women's studies. It comes from I guess women in the past and today, like fighting for equality and whatever. And
mhm,
this you had these, I figured, well, I was like, wow, you had these self-proclaimed feminists fighting for women's rights, pushing for the legalization and the normalization of prostitution, for example.
mm.
So that to me, it just seemed very
Sex work.
odd to
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Mm,
that's really where I was introduced to the concept of I guess instead of calling it the sex trade or whatever you call it, like the sex work. And that
yeah.
was
Another
really
euphemism.
odd. It is a euphemism.
Mhm,
And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. As like a teenage boy growing up, you're going to be exposed to a lot of pornography, unfortunately nowadays, right?
mm,
And along with that,
mm,
you're exposed to their propaganda, like talking about how it's empowering. And to me, it was really odd. It's like, wow, we're in an academic setting,
mm.
and that sort of propaganda, it's one-on-one the exact same thing. It's almost being pushed to us in this women's studies class. So then I was just like, always take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Don't always believe everything. And over there, that's when I
Mm,
kind of they were talking about like the LGBT stuff as well, and I'm just like, okay, I understand. Like these people are, yeah, the concept of heteronormativity, and to me, I was like, well, I think the default for most people, the majority of the people in this world are going to be heterosexual. It's how we're wired. That's my belief. There's
yeah,
going to be exceptions.
it's how the species continues.
Exactly, exactly. Now, does that mean if somebody is like homosexual or whatever that they deserve to be like to be mistreated? No. But so it was
Mm,
understanding that.
mm.
But then
Well,
at
I
the
know what
same
you
time,
mean because I wanted to ask you this. If this, I'm interested that I just want to pause you there because I didn't realize this was also the case in Taiwan.
I studied in
I
the
knew it was the
U.S.
case.
You listen to the way I talk.
Oh, sorry.
I grew up in
Oh,
the U.S.
sorry.
It's just I spent so much time
Okay.
in Taiwan. All of my summers were spent here, and then ever since I was a teenager,
Okay.
doing
Okay.
music over here,
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize
my
that.
social circle is mostly over here, and I live here now, and I'm more at home over
Okay.
here than in the
Okay.
United
Cool.
States for a variety of reasons. But yeah,
All right. Okay. Then yeah. That. But I just wanted to say that I remember also picking up on that. I went through. I have a women's studies minor.
hmm
Back in, oh God, when was it? 1997? No, 2000. Sorry, is when I graduated. Don't want to age myself, but whatever. From I got a bachelor's in sociology and two minors, a minor in American literature and women's studies. So very marketable things I came out of there with. However, there was, I remember at the time, I don't know if this was also the case, but you're one or probably two generations after. I'm a Gen
I
Xer.
entered college in 2011.
Mhm. Okay, so this is probably totally the stealth revolution, the stealth passive revolution, and from gender study, from women's studies to gender studies had probably then fully taken shape. But back in 2000, or when I was in college, there was a palpable tension between like the old guard feminists and the new guard feminists, or the third wave and the second wave. And you could tell because in one class you're getting the Foucault and the Butler and the sex positivity, and there can be feminist porn and sex work is work, or sex work is work. And then the other side, a very much a different type of thing. And I remember thinking later on, if your feminism makes pimps happy, then you might want to think about your feminism. I mean, just as a
That's what I thought too. So
just
it's
as
like
a thing.
it was weird because like to me, excuse my crassness, but stereotypically before when I was like a teenager, when I thought the word feminist, I thought of the stereotypical like angry lesbian, right? But then now I go to this class and I hear and I see like this stuff. It's like, wait, this is pimp propaganda. It's not it's not for lack of a better term, angry lesbians. It's like
Well, yeah.
it's
Mhm.
rightfully I guess the anger of the, I guess, second wave, rightfully so. But then it's like this
Mm,
postmodern mismatch, just trying to justify everything that is and make it seem revolutionary. All that Foucault
mm,
and Butler stuff.
mm.
So,
Language
and
games,
then of
yeah.
course
Language
we would read,
trickery.
yeah, no, we would also read books about like women and other countries and like their struggles and like whatever. And to me, it seemed like they were sort of stuff is packaged with pro regime change propaganda. So I was 18, 19. I was already thinking in these terms. I was
When
like,
did
wait,
you
there's
first
something about
when
all of this.
when did you first pick up on that there was something beneath the surface of all this TQ plus business?
The TQ plus stuff was later on. I didn't really put too much thought to it. I just thought it was very odd. I was just noticing the other things about institutional like feminism. Because if we're
Okay,
talking
I'm
about the
sorry. I didn't
TQ,
mean to jump ahead.
no,
Let's go back to that. Let me go back to that.
no,
Yeah.
I want to continue this thought though, because I figured I mentioned this
Okay.
feminism stuff because I think
Mm,
feminism nowadays, like what they call feminism, is a conduit for this ideology to be pushed on the people. They're trying to get
mm,
liberal women to justify it. That's how it appeals to people's desire to be accommodating and not be bigots. I didn't put too
mm,
much thought into the TQ plus stuff. I just thought I was just noticing other odd things about like the institutional feminism, like the stuff that makes pimps happy, or how a lot of the
mm,
stuff that we were reading, it almost seemed like it was justifying regime change in other parts of the world. And then later on, it just later on, like after towards the tail end of the Obama administration, right before Trump was elected, it just seemed like everywhere that you go in these like PMC, like white collar, like college student activist circles, whatever, they put this whole like we have to be inclusive and talk and introduce our pronouns stuff into like it just became a thing. And it just and to me,
mhm,
I was just thinking, is this really coming from the people or is it coming from HR departments? Because I really could not fathom
mm,
it coming from the working masses. You go
mm.
to a meeting. Hi, my name is so and so. He, him. And what was really funny was I was once at one of those
It is funny.
one of those things, and there was this one guy who clearly does not know like what the hell any of this stuff is. So he was like, hi, my name is Will, and wait, how does this go? Uh, he, him, her. So yeah, that's he was like a very
Yeah.
working class
Yeah.
dude. So
Mm,
it just so then around 2017 was when I was actually told by a friend, hey, this is go look into their ideology. It's not as simple as
mm,
a matter of being accepting them of who they are. And he introduced me to the concept of how there are so-called gender stereotypes and gender norms, and how this ideology actually reinforces gender
mm.
stereotypes. It's kind of like kids on the playground going, "Oh, you're such a girl," or what? Because like
Yeah. And then like,
a
oh,
guy,
maybe I am.
yeah, yeah, but it's like taking that to the
Let me
next
go
level.
down to the gender clinic.
Yeah, so it really seemed odd to me because
Uh,
if this is supposed to be liberating, I'm like, wait, you're forcing people back into these
mm,
like very cookie cutter molds of what it
mm,
means to be a man or woman. So okay,
mm.
if you like to climb trees and you're a girl, oh, all of a sudden you're that means you're a trans man.
Yeah, I don't know, or non-binary, or I mean, you look into the gender umbrella. That's why whenever they would
Hmm.
come, I think one of the things that I noticed, looking back now, is why all these terms and quote unquote genders exploded. Is because instead of addressing any of these questions, they just parsed more genders. They just multiplied it to give like the
Right.
impression that, well, look, we have so many of these things, so there must be something there, or else how could we have
Hmm.
45 variations of something that doesn't exist?
Exactly.
But I grew
And the
up, it was
more
just a tomboy. And I was a tomboy until about 12, 13, and then I became
mm,
interested in other things, boys.
mm.
Anyway, but it was just
So
this thing, and it would never have occurred to anybody that I was, that my gender expression was out of alignment with what I was assigned at birth.
Mhm.
I mean, bonkers, but yeah, go ahead.
And at first I was just like, whatever, live and let live. But then it seemed to me like
Mm,
that it wasn't a simple matter of that. And then I looked into, issues of how they're promoting puberty blockers for children with gender confusion and whatnot. And I'm just
mm.
thinking, wait, that sounds like a very dangerous idea. They say
Sounds like
they say it's
eugenics.
yeah, no, they say it sounds like they tell you it's reversible, but do you believe that? I mean, these are the most critical years of a person's growth. And of course, like puberty and all the process of change is never going to be 100% comfortable. It's an awkward time of your life. And of course, I also saw this correlation with a lot of these people being autistic. And I just felt, wait, it seems like these people are being targeted and being
Mm,
exploited. And it's like, wait, if you're thinking from a more critical lens of like the way capitalism puts profits first, it's like, what better way to make money than to create a lifelong patient? You convince them they're born in
mm,
the wrong body, but you're not going to change the body's not going to change itself on its own. So, okay, you put them on hormone therapy for the
mhm,
rest of their lives, and then they go through all of these very dangerous
mhm,
procedures. And most of them don't even live too long because it's very damaging for your body. Your body's not
mm,
designed if you're born a male, it's not designed to have that much, estrogen in it all the time,
mm,
and vice versa. So I was just thinking, wait,
mm,
if we are communists and Marxists and we're meant to be, critical and question everything, why is it that this one thing you're not even allowed to question? If you question, you're automatically right wing, you're automatically a bigot, you're automatically this, you're automatically
mm,
that. So
mhm,
that's kind of where I was in the
mm,
2010s, and I figured, well, maybe if I just don't talk about it for a while, more and more people will start questioning these things, and then one day
mhm,
it will be a little bit more opportune for us to speak of it. But
mm,
then it was also at the same time I realized, wait, we're just saying that as a Marxist, we should not trying to be making excuses and running cover for, for example, like sexual exploitation. You're already branded a swerf. And then for
mhm,
some reason, like the same people who love to throw the word swerf around are also the ones that are constantly accusing people of being turfs. I don't know. And
mm,
then eventually I have some friends who were like, "Hey, I think your intuitions, your spidey senses are onto something. Let me show you
mhm,
just straight up check out their some of their propaganda that they use to groom children
mm,
with and convince them that they're
mm,
trans. It's some very disturbing stuff. You have like this like sissy
mm,
hypno stuff where it's like these videos like telling these kids to like close their eyes and imagine
mm.
their like breasts growing out. It's very
Yeah, yeah.
it's very evil. It's
Are
sick
you
and
saying you
twisted.
don't think it's yeah, are you saying you don't think it's awareness raising or encourage that there's an issue if you have some dude who wants to encourage uh you know impressionable minors that they should explore different gender identities?
See, this is the
You don't
thing.
see any
If
problem with that?
no, I mean the thing that really baffles me
I'm
is
being
this. If I just
sarcastic, but just
I know you are, I know you are. But if I go to a
yeah, I know.
playground
That's
and
why I'm
start
glad. I'm like, oh,
talking
you're in
random
the States long enough. You'll know. You'll be able to read my
no,
my
I know you were being
yeah,
sarcastic. I'm just trying to bounce an idea off of that, which
yeah.
is if I went to a kindergarten or a playground and just started talking about these things to children, people would rightfully call me a creep. But if I put on a dress and
Mm-hmm.
talk a
So
certain
you have
way,
trans
all of a sudden, oh,
non-binary.
I'm so brave.
Mm-hmm.
And then there
Just
are
want to help the
legitimate
trans
concerns.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's legitimate concerns about like, women
Mm-hmm.
in their gender segregated spaces because men are physically stronger than women, and if like bathrooms and changing rooms and stuff, there are legitimate concerns. They want to have this level of privacy and they want to feel safe, and having male strangers
Mm-hmm.
around in their same spaces, regardless of how they identify, is discomforting for a lot of people. But you're just going to write them off as bigots? Like, if you're truly trying to be
Mm-hmm.
accommodating and you want to take into consideration that this person does not identify as this gender, but you also want to take into consideration the feelings of the women who feel unsafe, why not create a separate space for them that makes everybody feel safe and makes them happy. But it's like, I don't know. I also thought of this one thing
Have
one
you ever,
time, which
but
is
why do you think that is that the TRAs, the trans rights activists,
activists.
or some of the new male women, why do you think they're not into that? Why do you think, for example, when a sporting association will create a trans category, that nobody signs up for it?
Well, I guess the category wouldn't be that big to begin with, but
Mhm.
I think it's this is the thing. Like, part of their ideology is they are exactly the same as women,
Mhm.
but they're not. But they're exactly the same. But if, let's say, I made a movie and there was a character that's meant to be a trans woman, but I have a cis woman, an actual woman, playing her, they'll get mad at the lack of trans representation. But if they're
Mhm.
exactly the same, what difference does it make, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but also what I would say is, because the reason why is because the whole reason, it's not about what the tourists have determined
Mhm.
by watching and listening to what these male women say, is that uh, it's about affirmation. It's not about them being afraid to use the men's room. It's about they want their gender identity affirmed.
Yes.
So how other ways can you do that than by going into women only spaces and prancing around as a woman? Also, so that's one
I
of the
don't
things, is that it's not affirming. So it is what it's just another way of saying what you said. If they were to, they wouldn't
Mhm.
want a trans category, because it's just the whole thing about the cis and the trans, in my perspective, is that they need to do that to linguistically presume that now you have the category of woman, and under that
Yes.
category of women, you have two types of women. You have the male
Yes.
women and the female women, and the mean female women who want to hoard womanhood or not let these other types of women, have access to all of this stuff, are all the things. We're
Mhm.
the oppressing. We're oppressing the male
Right.
women. So that's one thing why they don't want to accede to that. But the other thing is that I don't know if you've gotten into the sexual aspect of it, or if you even want to touch on it there, is that I think a lot of people think that all trans women are gay men. It's not true. A
Mhm.
lot of the guys who say they're trans are straight. They're straight men who get off, quote unquote, presenting as a woman. So of course,
Yeah, that's why they end up being
no
trans
mystery
lesbians.
why they want to go into the ladies' dressing room, the ladies'
Yeah.
changing room, and go and make gynecology appointments for their non-existing vagina and all this stuff.
Mhm.
Anyway, I don't know if you've come across any of that at all.
No, I have come across a lot of it. Yeah, you have a
Mm.
lot of people who transition and then they go and date cis women. It's like they go and seek out cis women and not other trans women, and I don't know. It's there's a lot of that, and the big thing is here.
Mhm.
This is my thing. If you are an adult and you want to do these things, like you want to transition, you want to become something that you weren't born as long
Mhm.
as you are not causing trouble for other people, I feel like
Mhm.
I'm not in a position to tell you what to do or what not to do.
Mhm.
But nowadays you have like things like Drag Queen Story Hour, and they're like they're hypersexualizing like cross-dressing males in children's spaces.
Mhm.
And if you speak out against it, you're called a bigot, even though I feel like children should be defended from like these overt displays of sexuality in general,
Mhm.
straight or gay or like trans or whatever.
Yeah,
You don't take a child you don't take a child to a strip club, do you?
I'd hope not. Who knows? I mean, unless you have to work there and you don't have a babysitter. But
Well,
anyway,
then that's a whole nother issue, and
yeah,
that's
that's
actually
yeah. Then
quite
they'd be
sad.
in the dressing room. Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mm,
really sad, and it should be spoken of as a social ill. The
mm,
society has failed impoverished people. I mean, a child in that situation most likely would be not from a very well off background. So you have all of these things, and then you just question it. Why are we letting? If you just even dare to ask a question, you're a bigot. And now you have organizations like the Party for Socialism and Liberation (PSL). They're celebrating March 8th, International Working Women's Day, with a drag show. They did that I think last year or 2 years ago. So then I asked them, what's next? Celebrating next Black History Month with blackface? With a minstrel show?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's what. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's what it seems like. And then now you talk about the sexual perversion and stuff. At first, I'm like, oh, maybe it could be, maybe it's not. But then you actually go on their forums, and they say all sorts of depraved and creepy stuff. But then if you point that out, once again, you're a bigot. It just seems to me like if you want, I'm not saying everybody who falls in this category is that. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just going through gender dysmorphia, and this is sold to them as a solution, and they take it upon themselves to proceed with this, this process, this transition.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are packed under this term that do not go together. Is another problem. Yeah.
So, but then it also seems like a get out of jail card for just all sorts of depravity. And I have some thoughts of it. I think one of the reasons why it's pushed so heavily by the State Department, and they pretend that, oh, this is something that that the imperialists absolutely hate, and it's what liberation is all about. But the way I see it is it's enforced by certain wings of the what people might call the deep state. It's enforced by HR departments. You get rid of the dictatorship of HR departments. Yeah, nobody actually buys into it. And I think it's done because, for one, most people who go through these processes, if they go through the hormonal therapy and whatever, it does end up making them sterile. They cannot have children. I mean, what is it? Lupron, the thing that they use to It's
if they go through, and here's another thing that we want to clarify, because some people think there are people. I think it's still, although women, the uptick, the huge explosion in young girls gravitating to this, they tend to go more full board than some of the men. I'll just leave it to our viewers to figure out why that is. But that most people who say who identify as trans or non-binary, they don't go in for the whole medicalization stuff. And then there's the subset that will start with the cross-sex hormones, so suppressing. So if I'm in my case, if I was 18, decide I wanted to be a boy, which is impossible, but whatever, whatever they're calling it, they would have to suppress my estrogen and increase my testosterone. So that's the first thing. And there's been studies that show that once you do that with somebody, especially if they're younger, the likelihood of them continuing on through, if I was a woman, a hysterectomy, getting the boobs cut off, maybe even getting a fake penis, and the whole kit and caboodle, if you have the insurance to do it, increases. But there are a lot of people who just say, no, I'm trans. So I could look like you could tell me you're a trans woman. And in some places, if I didn't go along with that, I'd be called up to HR. Even if nothing about your appearance or demeanor changed, you would just declare, no, I am a she, her. And we would have to all work to try to remember that what we see and what we're supposed to pretend that we see are two different things. And that's somehow a progression.
Well, I think going back to the topic of why it's pushed so heavily, I think these people make the perfect I guess ideological warriors for hegemony. Why? Because, well, for one, a lot of them are estranged from their families for a variety of reasons. That's just a fact. A lot of them, not all. It's always sad when, I guess, their parents decide to just completely distance themselves from their children because their children are going through this. I don't think that's right. But it is a reality. I guess it's overwhelming for a lot of parents to deal with. But on the second part is a lot of them are sterilized, in this process, and they cannot have children.
Mm.
And people who are separated from estranged from their families are the easiest to manipulate, right?
Mm.
That's first and foremost. And secondly, they know that without institutions actively enforcing this ideology and making everybody play along, that nobody's going to affirm their views about themselves. Very few people are going to. Most people are just going to say, you've changed nothing about yourself. You're still a guy. You're just calling yourself a woman. You still sound the same. You've done nothing to yourself. Or they'll say, hey, just because you've like started taking estrogen does not mean you are the same thing as a woman.
Yeah.
You know? So there is that sort of because they know that these institutions enforce that, it kind of forces their loyalty to said institutions. That's one factor.
Okay,
And the
yeah,
other
that's
thing, yeah.
Mhm.
And the other so I mean, you're going to be very loyal to the institutions that uphold your version of reality. And the other thing is, if you can get people to believe that something very fundamental about themselves is not true, what else can you get them to
Mm.
believe?
Mm.
I think
No, I
part of
used
that
to
is also a test.
yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. I just said I think it is these forces out there testing the waters to see how far they can go with getting people to deny reality and believe something that's completely that's completely flies completely in the face of material reality is what I'm saying.
No, and I used to, a while back, if I heard someone say that, I'd be like, okay, I understand why we think that, but but now after living through this stuff and also going through the last round of the crazy Hasbra 24/7 Hasbra campaign when it comes to Israel Palestine, just when we get to the point where we know that the people who are in the media or in power are lying to us, and we know that they know that they're lying to us, and we know that they know that we know that they know that they're lying to us, yet they continue to lie to us because they can. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
But I remember saying similar things. It's like, and way back, remember the Pokemon Go thing when that was all crazy, when that was really popular, people going around trying to get the Pokemons. And I remember thinking, man, if they ever had to round us up, that'd be the perfect way to do it. Like have like really important Pokemon or limited ones in certain places, like in the middle of a stadium. And then all of us just kind of mindlessly go there and all of a sudden, okay, well, we're going to chip you over here now. Soylent Green. But exactly. It's like, if you can get people to go along, either like start to buy into it, like, well, maybe there are, different sexes, or maybe you can change your sex, or maybe there are two types of women and people who are neither or both, or going back and forth, whatever.
Or just
when
fearful
it's
of
just
speaking
abstract.
out.
Yeah. Or it's just abstract until you actually, come across it and you're like, well, wait a minute, some 6'4" dude walks into the bathroom with you and your two girls and you're like, what the fuck sorry, what's going on here? But exactly, if you can get people to go along with that, and it's in all the major institutions it seemed almost like overnight. I remember thinking, like, where's this pronoun stuff come from? And people will be mum for a variety of reasons. Exactly like you said, please don't kid yourself that you would do any different. You remember we used to think like, oh, if I was back in World War II and I saw this Nazi stuff going on, I would have done X, Y, and Z. Bitch, no, you wouldn't. What are you doing now?
Exactly.
If you can't say a man's a man and a woman's a woman, and there's no such that kids can be trans, but there's no trans kids, I don't think you're going to be really courageous in the face of something else. And these Marxists, I'm sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox now, then I'm going to quiet down. These Marxists, materials who think they're going to stand, you're going to stand up to capital, you're going to stand up to imperialism, you're going to stand up to the full force of the state, and you can't stand up to a dude who wants you to call you him she. Please just shut up.
But while we're
and come back. Sorry, now I'm done
while
with
we're
my
saying
soapbox.
that, I do want people to know that I am not saying that people who have gone through with transitioning or whatever, I do not think of them individually as bad people. There's going to be people among them who are bad. I think the people pushing this ideology are bad, and in a way, I think of them as victims of one, this very dangerous ideology, and two, Big Pharma, who was essentially, in my view, turning them into walking science experiments.
No, good point. And I want to underscore that too. And I try to focus on the game and not the players, or not
Exactly.
well, I mean, I will focus on the players like Martijn Roplight and Biden and all, and the USA and all the stuff that are pushing this stuff. I'll focus on them, no problem. But the
Exactly.
people that get caught up into this,
Mhm.
who start thinking, oh, maybe I am, maybe I do actually I'm a boy instead of a girl. Maybe this will make me happy if I start to present as a boy or a girl, or maybe it's not a paraphilia that I get off when I cross dress. Maybe it's a gender identity, and I should embrace that and do that full time. And if you have all this apparatus supporting you, yeah, I can understand how people get sucked into that. So those I don't want to, unless they're the guys who want to say they're a woman to get into women's prisons or the women's bathroom. I have no track for that crap. But the main problem is, the pharmaceutical company, the technological company, the politicians and the lawyers and all this stuff who've gone out of the way to create this apparatus to create this fiction of gender identity.
Right.
That's and what that says about all the stuff that we've been talking about, other people have been talking about the force of imperialism, the state, how easy it is to get people to get along with this stuff, especially if they see people from positions of authority and they think, well, other people are going along with that and they're going, so I guess this is just a thing we're doing now. And then you tell yourself, well, does it matter? It's individuals, whatever. All this stuff and so that's why I get really pissed off also when people want to dismiss this as just a culture issue. It's like, we really have to look at what this says about a variety of things, including the left, and particularly the Marxist left, because they're not coming out of this in any glory. Very little.
What I think is very funny.
Doesn't mean we can't forgive and forget and, reconciliation and figure out together how this happened and what it means. I think that's all important, which is why I want to thank you and also Eddie Lager and also the other guys that what I call unicorns who have come on and speaking honestly about this, because I realize that it can, it's not an easy thing to do. And you're very nice. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. I get that.
I do come off as abrasive and confrontational online sometimes.
Do you?
There was I do.
You're lovely in person.
Sometimes I do lose my patience and I just say things for sometimes just for the laughs it gives me, admittedly. But I think another thing I do want to mention is, people will what I want people to think about is this. You look at the two administrations in China, the one on the Chinese mainland in Beijing and the one in Taiwan in Taipei. Now the one in Taiwan and Taipei, specifically in Taipei City, it is essentially a puppet regime of the US. Right?
Asian tiger.
Why is it that you had Tsai Ing-wen, the former leader of the Taiwan area, invite drag queens to go dance at the so-called presidential office in Taipei, but you don't see Xi Jinping inviting cross-dressers to go dance in Zhongnanhai?
And I hope we never do.
Yeah, I mean, people will
don't
say,
take
"Well,
that away from us."
But they'll say, well, no, you see, you're just being a bigot because actually, Chinese communists are very open-minded to these things. Look at the flourishing LGBT scene in Chengdu. But here's the thing: the LGBT community in Chengdu, like with their gay bars and their drag queens or whatever, it's not state sanctioned. It's people doing what they want to do. It's organic. They're doing what they want to do, and they're not causing trouble for other people. Now, if it comes to a point where they're causing trouble for other people and they're promoting, puberty blockers and hormone therapy and whatnot for children, then I'm willing to assume that the government would step in. And you see over here, like they're pushing that stuff in like the current incumbent party, the Democratic Progressive Party. They did that stuff with the drag queens in the presidential office to appeal to Western liberals, and also because they're getting the same agenda from the same people that the Democratic Party are. Because back then the Democratic Party was incumbent and they had close ties with that party. But the people on the ground in Taiwan, outside of activist circles like college, like student activists and like white collar PMC outside of the cities, they look at that and they're very weirded out. They're just like, we don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is like, why? And then the
Yeah.
other thing
Because
is
that's always
why.
the thing. It's like when you think about just the why is it because at first you'd be like, okay, well, this seems weird or whatever. But then when you think like, well, what's going on here? Like of all the choices, why make that choice?
Why make that choice? And also, why does one side have to resort to lies? Because the way I defend my views is I think it is perfectly valid for us to say that, hey, do what you want. Please leave children out of it. Please do not encourage children to go do irreparable irreversible damage to their growing
Well,
bodies
encourage them to
or whatever.
disassociate from their material body. I mean, you gotta,
Yes, yes.
if you have any issues you have with your sex body or your sexuality or puberty, you gotta work those out. Not
And
go get whatever that is. Yeah.
yeah, but you know
my
what their
opinion.
what their talking point is whenever we say this? They're just, oh, that's just right-wing propaganda. Children, it's actually nearly impossible for children to go through these procedures. Okay, if that's the case, then how come we see so many detransitioners, like people who formerly got caught up in this ideology, going through these dangerous procedures and then realizing that, hey, they were too young to really make an informed decision. They were encouraged by adults who did not
Love
have their
bombed.
who were love bombed and did not have their best interests at heart, and they're speaking out. And what really baffles me is these people on those like trans forums, they're spoken of as like kind of like in the mafia. If somebody like has gone fed and betrays the mafia, they speak of them the same way.
Yeah, apostates.
Yeah.
Heretics.
And so
Yeah,
then I was like,
they have internalized transphobia of the heteronormative patriarchy. That's why they regret having their tits cut off and all the reproductive organs sterilized. Couldn't be
So one time
any other reason for that.
yeah. So one
God.
time I make this point, and then they're like, "No, that's just a right wing talking point. You're a white right winger for saying this. It never happened. It almost never happens." So then I just go on Reddit, go on a rant, just any random page, and I just screenshot it. I was like, they openly talk about this on gender subreddits, and let me read. I just pulled up the screenshot on like just read it out. First things first, talk to your parents about this and find a good trans friendly doctor, psychiatrist, and therapist. You are very young, so the only thing you may be put on medication wise is a puberty blocker, which does have potential side effects. But your doctors are the ones who can know if the benefits to you will outweigh the risks. You will not be put on female hormones at your age, and HRT isn't usually the cause of cosmetic complications during transitioning. It's botched surgical procedures. If you haven't started socially transitioning, like wearing different clothes, growing out your hair, wearing pretty accessories, trying out new names, I would try that first and give it time, because how you feel once you've socially transitioned may be amazing, and you may go, why did I ever question this? Transphobia is always going to be there and does hurt. But I can tell you from someone who transitioned later in my life, the horrible feelings I had about myself and the hatred for my body and gender were way greater than anything any transphobe would have ever been able to say to me. And I have become I've become a lot stronger and more confident since I transitioned. So, I mean, that's just one response. I mean, clearly it's a child asking, how can I be put on puberty blockers or go through with transitioning? So when people say it never happens, I mean, look at the answer. You
can
may be put on
imagine
puberty blockers.
Yeah. I mean, what's so sinister about that? Because it sounds so fantastic. Oh, just this and that and this and that. Like you're telling someone like going through like possible Halloween costumes or something. And if you have a kid who's impressionable, maybe they're struggling with their sexuality, maybe it's not autistic, maybe they had some sort of trauma. Who knows what this is? And then you get somebody, and it's like this whole thing, like, oh, like an avatar. Well, try this out, try that out, try out different clothes and pretty things, and do your hair, and see, this whole process, obviously highly commodifiable, capitalist. And these guys, and then the thing, oh, I waited, and if I were, and I can imagine if you're a guy who's like the AGPs, the autogonophiles that tend to transition later, after they've
Mhm.
had their wives and kids and whatnot, tend to transition later. Obviously, yeah, they've gone through full male puberty. They have all their stuff. And so, yeah, I can imagine them thinking, oh, I wish I had that society could have been such that I could have, been the woman I always was, earlier on. And then I would then their outside would look more like this fantasy they have.
Mhm.
So what you also have is you have these guys, these male, these men, usually men who do the on this side of it,
Groomers.
using groomers using the quote unquote trans kids to bolster their minority sexual thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, because if you're going to go full out on how this is born this way, or this whole turning what used to be a metaphor, I feel like I was born in the wrong body, became I was the wrong body.
Yeah.
Then you need the trans kid, because if you're like this at 50, you must have been like this at 6.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the use of after first the trans kids are the human shields of this, and then after that is the quote unquote trans men, because people, whenever they don't want to talk about the quote unquote trans women, so the male women, they don't want to talk about that because that's harder to pass. Yeah, they want to talk about trans kids, all the poor trans kids, and the trans men. Oh, you're gonna make her. You're saying there's these. They find the one who's probably 5'2", but is all like testosterone drought and has been working out and has the fake whatever. Oh, you're going to say that that's a woman. I'm like, well, that's a female, but they don't want to talk about the dudes because that's problematic. But the trans kids and these stupid, useful, idiot, virtue signaling leftists protesting for gender care, which, as you've said so nicely, this is sterilization, castration, mutilate. You turn the genitals into Picasso genitals if you go through the whole thing, and with the puberty blockers they say is reversible. No, it's not. It's not a VCR. You don't push pause. And it's not also that these people should know. Somebody knows, or these maybe doctors are all stupid. I didn't know how they're also programmable. But it's not just your genitals that are developing in puberty. Your mind is as well. So you're creating these arrested development, and as you said, dependent, controllable cadre of trans, non-binary, whatever.
Yeah.
It's almost like the perfect secret soldier or something, if I want to get really MK Ultra about it.
And sometimes, being as in communities and families, sometimes having the best interests of the younger generation at heart is telling them no. It's not just caving into everything they want. Is a good parent somebody who just always says yes to his or her child? Or is a good parent the parent that says yes when it's appropriate, or will say no when it's not appropriate and explain to the child the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, well, or just saying sometimes no is no. But yeah, I'm not, I have no plans to write a parenting book. I do have 3 kids, and I have to say the word I probably use most with them is no. And sometimes it's just, no. Yeah, I've never tried to be their friend or their buddy. Maybe that can happen, when they're 25 or 30. But it's just like, yeah, you gotta, and that's the thing when people want to say, oh, they can, these parents are they also always have these starry-eyed thing. I remember watching an interview. I don't know if it was on trigonometry, it was on something before they came out as raging Zionists, but they had a woman who thought she had 2 trans kids and then realized subsequently that she was like it was in a cult, and listening to her speak saying, well, we made a conscious decision. We didn't want to gender our kids. We want to let our kids, grow into it and let us know what gender they were. So these people had kids and they didn't want to they went out of their way not to recognize them as male or female until the kid at some point, I don't know if it's by what color they liked or what, they like a dress. So then they would, start treating them as that. And you can imagine how that went. But can you imagine? I'm like, these people are high as kites, it's like, but yeah, no. And then being willing to yeah, I haven't and I should preface this. I have 3 kids, none of them have had any gender problems. Yeah,
Mhm.
no one's ever come home and say I'm a girl or a boy or neither or both. So I haven't actually had to deal with that. I can only
Mhm.
imagine how I would have dealt with it. And the first thing would just be like, whatever, just let's see if it plays out.
Right.
And then if it didn't, if it persisted, then try to figure out what's going on there. But I would always have maintained that regardless of what you're thinking or feeling or desiring, you're still a boy or you're still a girl. And let's keep that the basis of how we go on. But
yeah,
no, it's just,
I also had one thought this
I
one
mean,
time.
affirmation only parenting. Can you imagine a worse
It's a
idea?
terrible idea. It's a terrible idea.
You're creating monsters for everybody else to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, like we have an affirmation only society. Are you kidding me? Since when? And that's totalitarian also. They don't realize that.
It is.
If you're going to have
In a
an
different way,
affirmation
it
only
is.
society and someone else gets to decide what you're going to affirm, that's totalitarian, people. That's what that is.
Exactly. Mhm. I also had this thought this one time that a lot of times the needs or the desires of women and trans women can be at odds. Let's give one example. I've seen situations where a trans woman is in a relationship with a male who's clearly a homosexual male, right? But then
Mm.
if he were to accept his partner's gender identity, then that would effectively mean that he's being pushed back into the closet because now he has
He's
to
straight now.
accept the fact, accept the not the fact, but accept that his boyfriend is in fact his girlfriend, right?
Mhm.
And is that necessarily good for that homosexual male? I don't think so. In a culture where that celebrates, gay guys coming out or whatever, I feel like that
Used
becomes
to.
kind of a bug, doesn't it? Doesn't it? And the other
Yeah.
is, I noticed
Mm.
I've seen many times on Twitter, like trans women saying that they entered the sex trade because being abused by Johns helps them affirm
Mm.
their gender, makes them feel like
Gender
women.
identity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's another thing at odds because actual women, it benefits women to end industries that promote sexual exploitation, right? But then these people want their gender affirmation, and that's their method of that's the method for some of
Mm.
them to achieve what they feel like is
Mhm.
gender affirmation. So it is
Oh,
a
and to go
contradiction
back,
right there.
yeah, to
Yeah.
circle back to the party you mentioned, the Party for
PSL?
Socialists and Social the PSL, is that what it is? And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I have this is so hard because when you have somebody whose work in politics you really admire, but they are so gender borged, you just don't know what to make of it. So Jody Dean, for example, she's all in on the trans trend. I think I'm halfway convinced that one of her kids must have gone trans, but I don't know.
Mm.
So she's her politics are great. Her theory is just, but yet she is all in on this trans stuff. And that there was also Andrea Chu, was with the guy who came out as trans and got all the accolades from New Yorker magazine. And if you look at what he says, he's basically saying that the woman who likes to get fucked, yeah,
Mhm.
it's all very carnal, like, the asshole can also be a vagina. All this stuff that they tout up as this wonderful trans woman who's so, lefty and progressive. And you look at the stuff, just like you said, with they will encourage people. One of the ways you can have your gender affirmed, if you're a man who wants to quote unquote transition, is to go into the sex trade. For guys who like to have sex, I don't know if they're homophobic and they think if they're having sex with the guy who thinks he's a girl, that doesn't make it gay. Whatever. There's all this
I
kind
think
of
there's
stuff
some of
going
that
on.
going on.
But these parties that celebrate that, it's like this is the most regressive understanding of what a woman is that I've ever heard in my life. And if a woman, if a guy who didn't say he was trans said this, like you just said, the double standard, if a regular guy were to say all this stuff that these quote unquote trans women say, these people would be like, oh my God, this is the most sexist, patriarchal, misogynist thing, whatever. But
You're basically saying women exist to get fucked.
Does it, and it's great. It's great. Yeah, of course, women love women, or whoever's getting fucked is the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The bonus hole.
It's like in prison culture when it's on what is it? What they call it, the punk.
Just like, my God. But then we mentioned it, like you said, we mentioned it. They don't want to deal with this. I don't know if it's because it's the gambler's fallacy that they put so much into it. They just have to keep going, or if they've like trans their kids, or they have a colleague, or I don't know what it is. But that's why they have to call us names and right wing, because they don't want to deal with any of this stuff. And I don't know if it's totally conscious, but it's subconscious level. They don't want to deal with it, so it has to be they have to moralize us even bringing up the question or the concern.
Zero self-reflection, and you know, people say, oh, it's because of, like, right now in the United States, they blame this all on Trump and the right wingers, and I don't think I feel like it's just it's the other way around. I feel like it's just Trump and the right wingers realizing that a lot of people feel this way and just using this to pander to the masses.
And I don't even think that. I think it's two things. I think, yeah, obviously they're political animals, so they see that this is a political win for them. But also, it's really not hard to say girls are adult. No, girls are child human females. Boys are child human males, and the same for men and women. We all know this. This is not. We're not going to engage in fantasy land at the federal government, and we're not gonna. You can't just identify into whatever category you want because it matters. Duh, it's the right thing to do. It's just basic reality and the right thing to do, and it's politically beneficial for them because they realize even most of the people who are quiet think this is crazy bullshit.
Exactly.
Yeah. And look at what and I have and what could be better? Again, these DSAers and PSLers and PMCs are so stupid. I think they love Trump secretly. What could be better for Trump than him surrounded by women and girls, because he just signed that order protecting sports, and then you have these freaking psychotics demanding Dr. Genderstein human vivisection clinics stay open for the trans kids. Play that on a loop and you will never win. You will never win.
Yeah.
It's gifts they give him. His corpse could run if they're doing this shit. And I don't know if it's just in the bubble of they all think that other people think. So I don't know if they just if they think this is what we do now. So they're just, and I don't know, but it's the most batshit crazy thing I've ever seen. Still, like, biological sex is not a right-wing issue, you dipshits. It just
it is not.
And they're the ones that made it a political issue. They're the ones that talked about not only women have babies and abortion can also be a men's, the trans women, all this bullshit. The trans men also need abortions. Yeah, because they could be women. They are women. All this stuff. The left did that. The Democrats, the liberals did that, and progressives ate it up because they love to lose and look like crazy idiots to the vast majority of the population. It's the only thing I can think of. They get off on, I don't know, being so just like batshit crazy, but yet telling us that we're, we're the crazy ones, gaslighting all of us who are like, what?
Part of it also goes into the agenda of the Malthusians.
There you go. Bring it. Let's go.
Yeah, because the theory of Malthusianism is you get to a point where in society in an economy where there's too many so-called useless eaters, so you need to reduce the population so that society starts working. You get rid of the so-called useless eaters. Now the problem is with this ideology is who decides who gets to live and which part of the population gets reduced, because once you do that, it starts entering into eugenics territory very easily. Now, when everybody knows about China's one-child policy,
are you saying that maybe there's another reason why people don't care if gay and autistic kids are voluntarily having themselves sterilized?
Yeah, That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And because you know about the one-child policy in China, and from what I understand is, at least from the West, China wanted to open up its markets to the rest of the world and needed foreign direct investments and wanted access to Western markets. So the elites from the West were like, okay, our condition to you, since you have a political system where it's a little bit more feasible to enact this, is to push a one-child policy. Because you're not going to push that in a liberal democracy. You're not going to be able to tell people in America, for example, hey, from now on, the government's going to tell you you can only have one child and you're going to accept it. It's very difficult to push. Now, China is one of the world's most populated countries in the world, second only to India. Right?
Mm.
So instead of doing that in America or in the West in general, it's okay, you push this ideology where this side effect just so happens to be sterilization. And people who don't accept it, you brand them as bigots. And at the same time,
I'm
Big
just,
Pharma gets to make a lot of money.
yeah, I'm listening to you, and I just realized that we
Mhm.
have some comments, and I always feel bad if I don't at least put them on the screen briefly.
Uh-huh.
So
I've been looking at them.
Okay,
What
good.
do you
So if
think
there's any, yeah.
about what do you think about this angle that I'm saying? I know Kushlook says I think it's modernized in that it provides profits, which makes it more market adaptable than the classic fascist era kind.
Okay, let
What
me
are
go
your
through
views
them.
about this angle?
What do you think? Do you think it's a good time for us to pause and go through some of the comments? Let's do that.
I
Let
think
me
so.
find the one that you're talking about. Let me find the
The
one that
very
you're
last
talking
one.
about, Kushlik. The very last one. That's easy. Thank you. I don't have to read fast. That's good. Okay. I think it's modernized in that it provides profits, which makes it more market adaptable than the classist fascist era kind. He's talking about eugenics. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
Not just eugenics, but Malthusianism
go
and
ahead.
population reduction by means of sterilization, but not necessarily forced sterilization. It's a way you do propaganda so people voluntarily sterilize themselves. Not with the goal of
They're
sterilizing
living their
themselves.
true gender
to-
self. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and it's also, as a side note, Alexander McKay, who's a friend of the show, and I'm a friend of it. Well, no, he's never had me on, so I don't know what that's up. Hello, Alexander, have me on your show. But no, side note is that he came up with, when we were we're working on a paper together. It's his thesis, the transgender Übermensch.
Mhm.
And basically it's this whole thing about, this, that you can set your own norms. You don't have to be constricted. You can even, if you're a man, you can decide you're a woman. If you're a woman, you can be a man, this and all that. And then of course all the technical and the market stuff that sets up around it. But yeah, and it makes it sound fantastic and great. Like, why should, let's yeah, I mean, it's the final frontier of liberation is the body. Let's liberate ourselves from that. The flesh, the transhumanist, the transhumanist autogynephilia man overlap is quite an interesting thing in itself. So the Pritzkers and the Rotblatts and whatnot. But yeah, to liberate from your body, which of course, how are babies made? We still have, you still have to have, to use a Louis C.K. joke, at some point, a farm fresh, and a farm fresh whatever have to get together. We still have to do that to have babies, even though you can, take one and put it together. But yeah, so you can't push this disassociation, or if you want to, we would say bodily disassociation, extreme alienation, because we're materialist Marxists. Yeah, they would say liberation from the confines of our biological body, which it has to be eugenics. I mean, that's, even if not by design, someone might have come up on that. So you have COVID, that took out a lot of old people. Yeah. And now you have this stuff, which I'm sure the percentage is still quite low, even though it's been skyrocketing since it became like this big, media push, and how fantastic it is to, to try out different gender identities or gender identity, whatever it is. You got a spectrum, a buffet, a whole market, if you will, of things to try on. Every year, different lipstick, every year, different gender. until you find the one that suits you. Yeah, that it's still small numbers, the people who, and hopefully they'll get even smaller now that Trump's executive orders have come up. Hopefully that sets the trend for other Western countries. And other, I don't know, I'm not as well versed on what's going on in the quote unquote global South, which is a ideological term, but small numbers, but it does decrease the population. And you have a lot of people who also think it's left, who also find it left to, use climate change as an example to think that people should, that's great to have no kids. The child-free thing.
It's
You're not
degrowth
childless,
propaganda.
you're child-free. You're not sex, you're sex-free. You can pick what you want.
Yeah. Are
Yeah, I mean,
are,
it's
are you
quite
familiar
brilliant.
with what's called the Draft Memo?
No, I have
So
not
the
heard
Draft
that.
Memo was it's something from, what is it? From the year 19 I want to say it's the 1960s. I think 1967. It's a document from Planned Parenthood. Oh, 1969. Single page, and it basically spells out like these policy proposals on how to so-called manage the population. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about this, but Planned Parenthood, although they do provide health services for women, does have its origins in Malthusianism and eugenics.
And not across the
Now,
board. There were certain racial categories they were particularly interested slowing down the birth rate on.
yeah. Well, one of the policies proposed by the draft memo was, let's see, fertility control agents and water supply. Okay. Encourage increased homosexuality. It's a one-page document, but I'm reading the ones that are kind of relevant to what we're seeing
Okay,
here.
everyone, I want to preface this in case it was it. So he's reading from Planned Parenthood Jaffe memo. From what year was it?
1969.
1969. So, Planned Parenthood, we're all supposed to celebrate that from top to bottom. He's going to read from a 1969 memo from that organization.
With these policy proposals on how to manage the population, which is Malthusianism, which does enter eugenics territory. Okay, one of them is payments to encourage sterilization. Payments to encourage abortion and sterilization on demand. Sterilization on demand. We've kind of seen sterilization on demand. It's just marketed differently. And compulsory sterilization of all who have 2 children, except for a few who would be allowed 3. So what I'm saying is there definitely are people in the ruling elites who are interested in getting people to sterilize themselves, but the average person, the average voter, is not going to take too kindly to being told that you should be sterilized or your children should be sterilized. So tinfoil hat side of me is saying maybe this gender ideology is a way for them to sell that. What do you think?
Or at the very least, it's a nice unintended consequence that someone might have picked up on. But yeah, and I think people forget that because again, I want to circle back to this, and I'm fine. The feminists don't like me because I don't believe in the patriarchy with a capital P. I think it's a conspiracy theory, but that's another show. However, when you talked about how they get women to sell this stuff, so whether it be LGBT, especially overseas LGBT, or abortion, or family planning, or any kind of Western imperialism, and I'll use woman face metaphorically here. If you woman face that, somehow the medicine goes down better. Yeah, that you're making that if it's not
maternal loving figures.
Well, just a woman doing it.
Yeah.
So, like, if it's a woman who's saying who goes in and is saying these things, whatever it is, whether it be upset about Islam and head coverings, or the lack of family planning throughout the world, or whatever it is, or why trans inclusion is so important. If you have women doing it, it's an easier sell. I'm not saying it's a fait accompli, but it's an easier sell. And so you have, I want to bring that back because you have, of course, usually everybody on the left and even center right. Well, of course, abortion should be free and not free. Oh God, that was a Freudian slip. Should be legal, safe, but rare. That's usually the thing that used to be like where you can meet people in the middle, you know.
Mhm.
But now you have, but you never get to they don't never talk about the eugenics part of it. And when people do, even though unfortunately it's like a Kanye during a mental break, they want to make sure that he's crazy or she's crazy or she's a self-hating woman who want to bring up that, you know, things can be complicated. They can be dialectical. They can be contradictory. That you have
Yes.
abortion and what we call family planning. And that's not that can be I don't want to say necessarily good, necessary thing, but it also has these other undercurrents,
Yes.
you know, and people want to,
It
and
has
so when I
social
see
consequences.
people, yeah, so when I see women who aren't just saying, who aren't pro-choice, but pro-abortion, like it's getting a teeth cleaning or something, or your nails done, they want to come at you and I have an issue with I'm pro-choice and that it needs to be legal and safe and the woman's decision, but I am not pro-abortion because pro-abortion, no matter what you want to call it, is terminating a human fetus that most likely 90% of the time would have come to term and lived a whole human life. That's what it is. And to face
I like to
that,
say,
you know,
I like to say that
but-
pro-choice.
yeah, go ahead.
I like to say that pro-choice and pro-life are oftentimes fake labels because a lot of people who are so-called pro-life don't care about the well-being of the lives after they're born, like a lot of people rightfully point out. I think that they are anti-abortion, and I think the people who are pro-choice are not truly pro-choice because for there to really be choices, there needs to be affordable childcare, and there needs to be social safety nets where a woman can actually have the choice to have a child and provide for the child and give the child a chance, a fighting chance at life, right? The people who are
No,
who
and this is
say
where
they're
I come.
pro-choice,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
they're just pro-abortion, and I think it's very disgusting that the way that abortions are celebrated by some of these
Yeah,
some
it's
more
nasty. It's not
it
a good
is
thing.
because it's always a sad thing. You meet any woman who's gone through this procedure, it's a lot of times it's very painful for them. It's a very painful psychological experience.
And for some, it's not. I'm just going to out myself here. Why not? I have 3 kids, but I had one abortion when I was, God, how old? I think I was 18, 19, just out of high school. And, you know, wild party, stupid decision. And then like 2 weeks of like, oh, please, God, you know. And so I ended up being pregnant. And I knew right away, like, I don't want to have this this baby.
At that point in
And
your life.
as soon as I could get an abortion, I did. It was like 7 weeks or something. I know what it was. And it wasn't traumatic for me, but it certainly wasn't great. I didn't enjoy it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You know?
It's not
I'm gonna be like,
something
yay. And also it's because I know that because I didn't tell, well, I've told people subsequently, but for years and years, no one knew but me, you know, because I felt stupid because I knew better, you know. But it was like, but and how I rationalize it. Now, if I really wanted to go and think about it, like, you know, but it's like I made that decision. And in every society, we have the rule. So thou shalt not kill. And then there's exceptions.
right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I did. I was like, I'm 18. I just had left home. I was just started, you know, whatever. I moved to the big city of Portland. And it was a fly by night. It was not somebody I was in a relationship with. And I was just like, so I made a decision. And if I look at my life in the entirety, if I had not done that, the 3 kids I have now would not have existed.
Yes.
So, you know, life is,
It's complicated.
but I would never be like, you know, yay, you know, I've had 75 abortions. It's like, you know, it's whatever. So I get it, ladies. I get it. But so that's why I'm like, yeah, but to you and why I come across the people at who I can kind of defend, the Matt Walsh, if you know who he is. His position, he's like almost like never. There's almost like never a reason for having an abortion. He thinks it's murder. He's consistent on that, and I think that is his belief. But what people, I totally agree with you. What I get with people, not that I think that should be the law of the land.
Right,
That's his
right. But
belief.
you respect
There's
his
people who believe that.
consistency.
It's consistency. But what they don't do is then what you do. It's like, okay, if I hate abortion so much, if I think it's literal, if I think terminating a pregnancy at 12 weeks is the same as killing a 1-year-old, then I would be doing everything I could to reduce the amount of abortions that women are having without forcing women not to have them. You know, so all the things that you said. And sometimes women just don't, and it's also okay. I wouldn't say fantastic, celebrate it. It's also okay if a woman who does have enough money, who can do that, but it's just like, I just can't do it. I'm not going to judge
A lot of life
those
circumstances.
ladies. Yeah. But if you want to reduce the economic thing or the stigma, you know, then focus on that. And so you can bring down so you can make it rarer, not just like, oh, they just have to never have sex, or they should have this, or everyone should, you know, whatever it is, all the crazy stuff, you know. So that's where I totally agree with you. It's like, if you really think it's murder, but you live in a situation or a context where you're not going to be able to ban it or to like criminalize the activity, then you should be doing what you can as a Christian to save those members of the flock
in the first place. Yeah.
To the extent that you can, without, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm with you on that one. I think they should be available and safe and regulated, but it also should not be something that's like celebrated the way that some like leftists celebrate it, in a way that's just very insensitive and disgusting.
No, it's weird. And when they like, you know, when they had like the abortion, they had like the vaccination van at the DNC presidential nomination thing. Yeah, that's my whole thing, is that it should be legal, it should be safe, and it should be accessible. But that culturally,
to both men and women,
it doesn't
right?
say a good thing about your culture if rather than being pro-choice, you're like literally thinking abortion's a fantastic thing.
Right.
It's like, that to me is that's my take on it. You know,
and you think they should be available to men as well, right?
Of course, because we know that it's not that, you know, trans men who are men, trans men are men, ergo men need abortion. It's true. No, my God. Anyway, so let's see. But thank you for that segue. And I want to, and this is another issue, because here, look at morbid symptoms. What I like about the show, or what I want to continue with it, is that for it to be a place to have these types of conversations on these topics, without, you know, language policing and and being like, oh my God, you know, people can clarify. So thank you for that. That's been obviously something that's been on my mind for a while. Anyhow, about the eugenics thing, and this is what people who think that eugenics is not all Nietzsche Nazi stuff. Du Bois was the talented 10th. He also was for had pro-eugenic policies. There's a lot of kind of the whole talented 10th, so the W.E.B. Du Bois and other people in that kind of strata, like really intellectual African-American strata at that time. They also were concerned about the breeding of the black plebs. They also wanted to get a handle on that. It's not just, you find these eugenicist type of things, and you know, and family planning is another word for eugenics. Actually,
it is.
It just is. You know, because any societies have a way, or any kind of group, you have a way of figuring out who's going to have babies with who, or who's likely to have babies with who, how many babies, what kind of babies. And with Planned Parenthood, or in the liberal era, I guess, has made that an individual decision that sits with women. And maybe that's the best place for it because we do have the babies. But but that's a fairly modern thing. It's like it's all up to the women, the individual women, when they have a baby, who they have a baby with, and how many they have. And of course, I don't want to take that away. I want someone else deciding, who I have babies with and how many. But but it's still a breeding practice, in terms of reproducing and how it's done. And there's no way of getting away with that because that's how we don't come from seeds in the soil or from the mountaintop. So we have to, these things happen.
Right.
But anyway, so let's see, we've been going for almost 2 hours. I want to, is there anything in particular that you want to circle back to or that you want to talk about before we go through some more of the comments?
Just one thing, really. Because you did briefly touch on the culture war versus the class war, and what's really curious to me is a lot of times you have these self-proclaimed Marxists saying, "Why do you care about the culture war? It should only be the class war." But what's really curious to me is whenever they cancel somebody, it's always over some culture war stuff. It's never over some class war stuff. So clearly, the culture war also matters to them, and it matters to them because we as a society experience a lot of things through culture. Every class has its culture. If there is a class war, many times it manifests itself as a part of the culture war. I mean, why is there, when Che Guevara, there's quotes talking about like the creation of a new culture or a new man or whatever. That in itself is both
Mao was
war
pretty
and
big on the cultural changes.
Oh yeah, there was the what was called the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, and which kind of did
culture war.
Yeah, it did shape China's trajectory for a while, for better or worse. Just the very fact that it did
I'd
happen
imagine.
when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter how you
reconcile the
positively or
negative and the
negatively.
positive is something Marxists should be able to do if they're going to call themselves Marxists. But again, people can identify in and out of that group. But yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up because it's such, do curse words bother you?
They don't bother me. I just didn't want to curse in the first 10 minutes of your show because I know it
because
affects
sometimes I get so
monetization.
upset. I get so upset now because my kids are all at school, so they can't hear me. So I can speak. I can go back to my logger roots, longshoreman roots.
I don't care. I just
only
try not
if
to
I do,
curse too much on other shows to affect their monetization.
No, I do. I do too. I just don't want to. I try to be nice. I'm not going around dropping F-bombs all the time, but sometimes, But again, because I want to be welcoming. I don't want to cancel anybody. But there's two groups of academic or intellectuals or people or whatever you want to call them who I really have issue with on this issue. And the first one is Marxists, and the second one is Lacanians. I'm not going to talk about the Lacanians now. Talked about the Marxists. So, it's this culture war. Well, isn't that convenient for you? I think what it is you don't want to touch it with the 10-foot pole because you're scared. You don't want to lose your likes. You don't want to lose your followers. You don't want to get the stink eye at the DSA conference. Or you can even be somebody like Midwestern Marx or the ACP and not want to alienate other sides of the left because you already have enough coals in the fire. Yeah. And I can get why an organization, especially who's a class-focused one, wouldn't want to be, tits out with this issue, so to speak.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to make it the main thing. But with
I was that way
to
too.
say it's a culture, to say it's a culture war, to say that somehow it's all just, who cares? To say that's like, well, what about the gentrification of sex? Isn't that kind of akin, a kind of proletarianization? What about the market? What about all the stuff we've been talking about? What about dudes in women's prisons, bathrooms, sports, rape freaking crisis centers? People, these dudes getting off, going into these rape crisis centers and listening to women recount their stories. Sorry.
And getting off to it.
This stuff has serious consequences, material serious consequences. I agree to you. I agree. It's a luxury issue. It's top down. It's all this stuff. But it does reach the ground in a variety of ways. It doesn't just stay up there in the status.
Very real consequences.
It's a cult. You have kids being taught about the genderbread man, the genderbread person in grade school. Well, there's your head, and then they have your sex, and they had the sex thing just literally in the genitals. Like that's the only place of your body that your sex is. Your your dingle or your yoo-hoo. I mean, crazy shit. Anyway, but I get it. I understand why, especially you look around and it's like, Jesus, people are getting, struggle sessions, and even Macy Gray had to go off and educate herself and all this stuff. But that's just the personal cowardice or careerism or not being able to afford taking the risk to speak out on it. I get it. We're all cracked vessels. I'm also far from perfect. But at the theoretical level, so what? We don't have a superstructure anymore. There's not the interaction between the base and the superstructure. And as if there's not a material industry component to this stuff. And as if, so they can become dialectic when it suits them and very not when it doesn't. So it's like, well, where is this coming from? What is this the political economic manifestation of? What, we're Marxists, we're not interested in alienation? How the fuck more alienating is it than trying to escape from your body and not being sold as progress? No, exactly. I mean, I can get why they could do it. And I'm not going to come up here and be like, look at your tweet and you didn't say anything. But I am so done. I get such a reaction when some Marxist, especially if it's a dude, wants to dismiss this as a culture issue. Like I'm somehow not as, erudite or, I'm not like there's some sort of umpire up there from Mana saying that what's a culture, what's a class issue and what's not, as if they're not interconnected.
Exactly.
Sorry. So
I see some of the
I'm not telling you.
Most ridiculous.
It's been hard being a turf Marxist.
No, part of my my cancellation. I feel you. Part of why I was canceled. But the thing is, when I was canceled, I lost a lot of followers, but I ended up gaining more. Like I just swapped a lower quality set of followers for a higher quality one. So thank you.
There you go.
Thank you for the cancellation.
Yeah.
Part of it was because
it's nice the trash takes itself out.
Yeah. I was so disgusted by some of these Westerners who would take look at North Korea and project their politics onto them, saying, "Oh, America is so transphobic and we live in fear of blah 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 blah." Whereas in North Korea, there's no laws that go against like transgenderism or whatever. And I'm like, okay, in America, there are no laws in the books against foot binding because it never was a social phenomenon in the United States. Just like there weren't laws in the book for like traffic violations for automobiles until that became a problem and that had to be addressed. So I'm like, it's kind of stupid of you to assume that people in North Korea are going to be more welcoming of your gender ideology than people in America, because I'm sorry, I cannot think of a more friendly place in the world than places like Portland for this ideology. Maybe like Europe, maybe parts of Canada. But like North Korea.
Oh, dude, I've lost friends and family members over this because I won't buy into it. Oh, Portlandia, practically a documentary.
They dogpiled me, and they're like,
"Well, you're hitting a non-binary there. They them's everywhere." Anyway, go ahead.
They said that I am a Western chauvinist for saying this about North Korea, and it's like, I've been there, you haven't. I've heard North Korean people. I have. I've heard them talk mad shit about this kind of stuff.
Oh, I hope so. I've been to South Korea, but never North Korea. So South Korea, North Korea, both Korea, but culturally,
you missed you missed your opportunity before 2017. Before 2017, you could go to North Korea on a U.S. passport, but thanks to Otto Warmbier, you have to wait till Trump lifts the travel ban. Because you know how the travel ban works.
No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay, so it's not North Korea banning U.S. citizens from traveling there. What the ban is? It's Trump during his first term issued a travel ban for U.S. citizens traveling to North Korea on a U.S. passport. So you hear the wording here. He's banning them traveling there on a U.S. passport. But if you have a second passport for another country, you can still go. But now most Americans do not. And the thing is, though, North Koreans themselves don't ban Americans from going. The way that foreigners book tours to North Korea is you look for companies like Koryo Tours or whatever. And what those companies do is, because of sanctions and other reasons, you can't book directly with a North Korean tour company. The North Korean tour companies work with these foreign partners who sell tours to foreigners, and then you meet in China. And then from China, you either fly into Pyongyang or you take the train into North Korea.
Sounds like a great Netflix movie.
Yeah. So the thing is, these companies are not going to mess with US tourists trying to travel there, because if they get found out by the US that they're facilitating US travel to North Korea, they get pretty screwed. So that's how the travel ban works. So, but hopefully the travel ban gets lifted in the future. Now, the problem in the past few years is ever since the COVID, they were the first to shut down their borders, and they've only recently began partially reopening their borders for travel. Now, at first, they only opened up for the Russians, for Russian tourists. So for a while, you were seeing a lot of Russian people going there, or people traveling with Russian groups. Now, from China, they've reopened it partially, but only to the special economic zone of Rason, which is in the northeast. I've been to Rason, and my suggestion is, if you've never been to North Korea, Rason is not a very good place to be like your first visit, because it's not Pyongyang. It's not like other parts of the country where there's a lot more. It's literally an experiment of a special economic zone, and Pyongyang is much nicer than Rason. Like, Rason was supposed to be like North Korea's like Shenzhen, but it never really took off in that way. One of the guys behind Rason's development was that uncle of Kim Jong-un's, who was executed for being a little bit too cozy with corrupt elements abroad. So take that for what you will. It's an interesting sort of. Sorry for the little,
no, and another thing I'd love to have you back on, because I need to wrap up. But I make you're how lovely. I'm so excited. I hope you come back on, because I would also love, and I feel bad, I don't really know a lot about Taiwan. I mean, I know where Taiwan is, and about the one China policy, but what I have no idea about is the different political fault lines within Taiwan.
Oh,
so
right.
And I
it is complicated. Nobody gets it right.
Yeah, but I would love to do a show on that, because I know that I understand the basic thing about the one China policy.
Right.
I understand a bit about the Hong Kong thing, and
did
whatnot,
you know that
but
until the
in terms of
1980s? Sorry. Did you know that until the 1980s, if you were a Taiwan separatist in Taiwan, you got thrown in jail? Not by the Communist Party of China, but by the government over here.
No, see, this is what I'm saying, is that all I know is this. I'm going to out myself here. I know about that. I know about Chiang Kai-shek, and I know how just really, excuse me, just really, the broadest kind of chronology there.
Right.
I know that Taiwan was part of the quote unquote 5 Asian tigers that the US on purpose wanted to bolster economically, then also, of course, with the bases, and they don't have a base in Taiwan. They didn't go that far. But
it was not even. What's interesting though, what people don't mention about the Asian tiger era of Taiwan was that was after Chiang Kai-shek died and his son Jiang Jingguo took over, and his son Jiang Jingguo was educated in the Soviet Union.
See, I really, so we don't, and I'm guessing that most people that look like me probably don't, but I don't know.
No, I will say most pro-China Westerners.
What people in Taiwan want, and how that gets expressed, and what's okay to talk about or not to talk about, like someone like you with your views, how careful do you have to be? And I understand that the US wants to shake it like a stick, like kind of play with like, oh, are we going to recognize Taiwan? Are we not going to recognize Taiwan? Are we, blah, 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 and all this
the US
stuff.
has never recognized Taiwan and never will.
Yeah.
Because even before 1979, the U.S. did not recognize Taiwan as a country. It recognized the so-called Republic of China, and according to Republic of China law, Taiwan is but a part of China. It just recognized a different government as the government of China. It never recognized Taiwan as a country, and Taiwan can't be recognized as a country until independence is declared first. And the separatists in power ever since 2000, they never really had the balls to do it. They've just been lying.
Anyway, I need to stop you there because this has been a real rich conversation,
Exactly,
and I want to be
right.
fully focused when you start talking about this, especially since I don't know much about it.
Right.
And I'm assuming a lot of the people don't either. So what this means is that we'll have to have you back on to have a total Taiwan focused discussion, both internal, but also, of course, between Taiwan
Right.
and mainland China, and of course, Taiwan and the US.
Right. In
I
the
would love to
meantime,
do
if you
that,
guys
and
are curious,
I'll try to educate myself a bit.
in the meantime, if you guys listening are curious, you can go to my show, which the link was in the bottom of my video, the stxy.show. You'll get all the links over there to
Oh,
the
sorry.
YouTube
Let
channel.
me pull this down. Let me hide the comment if I can find it. Oh, here it is.
Yeah. Go to that website. You'll get all of the links, like YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah. So www.stxy all capitals.show, and his
Doesn't
more
have to be
general website. Oh, okay. It's more general website that also has his music. He's like, he's a Renaissance man, doing lots of things. Check that out. So here's what we do. We have 2 hours and 13 minutes. We still have some comments and questions we probably haven't got through. Should we take like a 5-minute break and come back and quickly scroll through that, or do you have to bounce?
I could do that.
Okay. Or also, I don't know. I don't think you can put them on the screen. I just need to take like a
cannot.
5-minute break. Okay. Yeah. So I was saying I could take a 5-minute break and you could go, do the thing. Okay, people, here's what we're going to do. Yeah, we're going to take a tea break, pee break, whatever break we have. 5, 6, well, I'm not a fascist here. 5-10 minutes at the most. Then we'll come back and we'll go through the pertinent questions and comments. If there's any hate in there, unless it's funny, I won't put it up. If it's funny hate, might put it up. And then we'll have him back to do a Taiwan deep dive. Oh, excited. I'd like to know I should know more about that, especially since the war games my country of birth likes to play. Okay, so people, I'm gonna put up we'll be back in 5 minutes. I'm gonna drop us down. I'll put up a bar and I'll see you guys soon. We'll be back in 5-10 minutes to go through the questions and comments that you have for Xiangyu. Xi Jinping, Xiangyu. Oh
Xiangyu.
My God. Xiangyu, sorry. All right, let's come back here. Let's see if our guest is here.
I'm here.
He is. What a professional. My gosh. You'll have to give me some tips afterwards. Podcasting. Anyway, we're back. We've had a great show, and now we're just going to go through some of the comments and questions. And I'll just start at the top. So, Jerry Jacobs, hello. Good afternoon, comrades from Hampshire, England. Looks like an interesting show. I think it has been very interesting.
Hopefully, I haven't disappointed.
I understand. I don't think so. And really, if they are, that's on them. We've brought good content here. I understand she, her, he, him, they, them, but can't grasp combining a she or a her with a them. Yeah, we don't know either, Jerry. We're with you. I haven't thought about it before, but I've never had any issue about sharing a female space with lesbians. It's just difficult with male women. Yeah, same here. Yeah. Depraved and creepy is sadly what most men have become. Okay, well, we'll leave that. That's an issue for another time. Free Palestine. You can come up and we can talk about that if you want on a different show. Jerry, thankfully my 41-year-old daughter and 20-year-old granddaughter seem to have very nice male partners. Yeah. I'm doing my best with my son. He's 18, and you know he's a big fan of the Top G, and he likes to quote Tateisms at me, and I'm just like whatever. I'm like, whatever, those are just kind of bromides, and fine, but don't send them any money. Don't register for Hustler U. Anyway, hopefully he'll watch this show and Eddie and the one I did with Eddie Lyer, and because you guys are more in his age group, although older, maybe he'll get bitten by Marxist Leninism and whatnot, because coming from his mom, it's kind of not so interesting. Free Palestine, Pritzker, Soros, etc. Yeah.
He made this comment when we were talking about the people pushing this ideology.
Yeah. And the Pritzkers is interesting because Peggy Pritzker, some people credit the Pritzkers, in particular Peggy Pritzker, for Obama emerging on the scene the way that he did out of Chicago. And Peggy Pritzker has an uncle who now goes by Jennifer Pritzker, who is a quote unquote trans woman, autogonophile guy who has a wife and kids and grandkids, but decided at 60 that he was going to be the woman he always was. And the Pritzkers also they fund a lot of this kind of gender stuff in the schools and universities, but also the more kind of medical. I think they're involved in pharmaceuticals. It's one of these huge conglomerate family things, but they are involved in this both personally through the, now Jennifer Pritzker, but also financially and politically very invested in this. Soros, I'm assuming with his foundations and whatnot, that all of them are probably really big on trans rights, but I can't speak to that. I don't know if you know anything about the Soros, any particulars when it comes to this. No?
Well, I think we were also talking about Colorado. I think we were talking about how this stuff was tied in with regime change operations. I think that's the context of this comment. So yes, they're very heavily. That's his claim to fame.
Well, and I know that we're supposed to. One of the ways that we're groomed into not caring about Palestinian lives and others is because, well, they're not down with the LGBTQ plus, but Israel is super down with the LGBTQ plus, and apparently Ukraine, or I don't know, they try to make it like I can't speak to like organically how LGBTQ plus friendly Ukraine is, but they like to show that they are, whereas the terrible Putin regime is, not. Apparently.
I have a comment on that.
So good, please.
Before the war happened in 2022, many years, I think it must have been like 2018 or 2019, I saw a documentary on the Azov battalion. And in the documentary on the Azov battalion, and I mean, their public image to the West is we are down with the alphabet soup. But
Mhm.
internally, the Azov Battalion, they had these little camps for children where they learn how to shoot guns and learn survival skills. And he was the guy who was teaching them how to shoot guns was like, what you have is a serious weapon. It's not a toy. You don't point your guns at each other. You don't point your guns at your countrymen. You point them at the enemies, the Russians, the people pushing LGBT. That's
Oh,
that's
okay.
what the guy said. So internally, they're not very down with this stuff either. I mean, culturally, in this regard, they're not too different from like the more like traditional Russians. What I'm saying is, in both of these countries, you're going to find people from like all over the place in regards to this with varying views. But it's just really weird
Mhm.
how you have like the way that they're justifying this is, hey, one of
Mhm.
them, this side that we're propping up is very pro this, and the other side that we don't like is very
Mhm.
anti this.
Mhm.
It's like, why not?
Yeah,
Like,
and so if you're pro LGBTQ rights, and if you're pro women's rights, and you have to be pro Ukraine, and against this, you have to be pro Israel, and against the Palestinians, or the all the other people that Zionists have issues with.
yeah, but what's really odd,
Yeah, and good.
what's very odd though is at the same time you have like the backlash to this is not the backlash, but the reflexive response to this by some of these leftists is they'll start doing like LGBT for Palestine and start waving a bunch of like rainbow and trans flags with the Palestinian flag, and I'm just like, why is this even why should this be part of a bundled package? Why not just support their sovereignty and make it about them and not you if it's who you're out there to support? You know what I'm saying? Like I saw
I've
this
never. Sorry, go ahead.
the way that like protest culture works for a lot of these like PMC people and these college activists is it's never about the people they're standing up for. It's always about themselves. It's me, 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 me. It's virtue signaling. I went to this. There was this one protest against the America Institute in Taiwan, which is like the de facto embassy. That's not an embassy for the U.S. over here in Taiwan, and they were protesting I guess Biden's supply of arms and support for Israel, which I just went there to see what was what was going on. But it was there were these like libtards over there with these signs, part of this organization. It's like one of those like legalized sex work organizations over there, like flying their banner along with like the Palestinian flag, and it's like, why are you even making this about yourself? We don't
Recruitment.
do it. Yeah.
No, I think I totally agree with you, and I think it's sick. But I think they would probably, to be inclusive, they'd probably just inclusive wash it. But yeah,
Right.
this forced teaming thing, or getting people to associate things together that really don't really belong together, or muddying the water. It's like, the more mixer, the weaker the drink. And you would say that, like, you can have all these things, but right now we're focusing on trying to keep as many people from being obliterated in Gaza as possible. This could be so the forced teaming thing, and the kind of wanting to, I think, I don't know, like stolen virtue or stolen valor or something, or just to recruit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's organizations that can't generate any really much excitement, so they just wait for something to pop off and then run over there and try to hand out their
Like all
stuff.
Trotskyist organizations.
Sorry?
Like all Trotskyist organizations.
The DSA, yeah. No, it's like, oh, here we are. Don't forget about us. Like, well, they did that with Occupy Wall Street too. They tried to turn into a recruitment drive. But also, it's just so. Or my favorite. You can't be pro-Palestinian if you're not also pro-trans or whatever. I'm like, what the frick are you talking about, yo? And or the people on the or the opposite, and it works quite well. The people will be like, well, I don't know anything. Like I people were just reflexively, like they put the left wing, right wing thing on the gender issue. And so they just thought, okay, and this is being pro this is left and being against it is right, and they just kind of used that filter to decide whatever kind of reaction they were going to throw out to what you were bringing. And so I try to first presume that people are good faith actors, and I know a lot about this issue. I actually lived in Gaza for 2 years, 2002, 2004.
Oh.
And so that's I don't want to, that's another story. So not that you can only know about something you've actually lived there, but I do have that, and I became quite interested and kept up on the policy on that issue since then, reading as much as I could, and also being American, and since Israel couldn't do what it's doing without America, I feel it's also my responsibility to keep on what's going on over there. And I would just say, like, what are you talking about? Why do you think that LGBT that gay people are hunted down like wild animals in the streets of Gaza? Why do you think that? Well, they have this idea, and I'm like, look, I'm not saying it's not pro LGBT. You're not going to have any pride parades there anytime soon, but I'll let you know, just as an anecdote, one of the things I did there, because it was fun, it was so cheap, is like every weekend I would spend like a whole Saturday or Sunday at a beauty salon run by Christian Palestinians. So, and they had two of the most obviously gay men I'd come in contact with working at that salon. Yeah. And most salons, you'd only have women working at women's salons and only men working at men's salons. But at this salon, these two guys were there. So nobody ever said they were gay. They never said they were gay. It was kind of this don't ask, don't tell type of thing. And I don't know what went on with I don't know how, I don't know, but it's like you just knew. So, and apparently that it was worked out, whatever. And I was never going to ask him, like, so,
Yeah.
And also, it's the idea that, and also just on that number, it's like, if you're really concerned about gay Palestinians, who's killed, manipulated, blackmailed, done all kinds of nasty things to gay Palestinians more, the Hamas or Israel? I know the answer to that. And the answer should be obvious. If you have one group that has all the power and another group that has no rights, that's not going to be exploited. That's not going to be used every which way.
I mean, missiles don't have eyes.
Sorry?
Missiles don't have eyes. They're not going to discriminate who gets killed when they explode.
Well, but also you need information assets in Gaza, and the easiest way to get people to do something is to scour their internet activity and say, hey, it'd be really terrible if your family found out what you've been looking at online or what you've been doing. They turn people that way. Or also there's instances of at checkpoints, if they get women and then they get compromising pictures of them, and then can use that to blackmail them. It'd be really terrible if these got out to your family.
Wow.
And not this is anything that only Zionist Israelis do. I mean, this is stuff that regimes do. They didn't make it up. With this presentation that somehow Hamas is the ogre, and they're just like, ugh. And yeah, you can have issues with them. I'm not, certainly not going to sign on to suicide bombing policies in the Second Intifada, which backfired on them tremendously anyway. And there was division on that as well. And I was there during the Second Intifada, but that's another story. But it's just this idea that this kind of, I'm like, what are you even talking about? Or the feminists who I started calling TERFs, PERFs, Palestinian excluding radical feminists, because they wouldn't say a word about what was going on to Arab women and Palestinian women, but they'll go on their horn and shout like nobody's business when it's the Taliban. And if you point out that contradiction, I just don't know how Islamist men are, or I'm like, I've been somehow brainwashed or something. I mean, it's just crazy. Anyway. Okay, Free Palestine. It's the destruction of truth and attack on women and children. Yeah, I mean, if we're encouraged to deny and suppress what's obvious to us, that we can sex people with a tremendous amount of accuracy, because evolutionary-wise, you can pick out who's a female and a male. And obviously women have a more acute sex detection than men from a greater distance, also for obvious biological and evolutionary reasons. But we're supposed to pretend that it's all cultural and Western imperialist patriarchy that decide there were two sexes.
But I think among liberals, women are the ones who are propagating it a little bit more and are propagandized about it. I think it's because of this they're taking advantage of the fact that a lot of women want to be more accommodating and just less confrontational. I think there is that level of manipulation going on.
This is true, but there's also women who can see which side the bread's buttered. There, and it's also luxury beliefs. If you're someone like Emma Vigeland talking about trans women's rights, she's never going to have to. She's not going to have to share a prison cell with 6 foot tall Dee, you know, who's a sex offender who decided he was a woman all along. You know, he's not going to end up in her crisis center or homeless shelter. He's not going to take away her spot on the volleyball team. You know, so it's kind of, and I think in a way, the trans woman friend is the new gay friend. It's like an accessory.
Yeah.
And I had some top shelf gay friends in my 20s, and it's fun, you know, go out with them and go with you this and that, and you're just having a good time, and then you just kind of, I think they just think that's the idea in their head of how all the guys who claim these identities, they're just like that. You know, I think there's a whole variety of things, and also to be accommodating. Well, you know, and you know, this kind of motherling aspect that can be, that if it takes too far can become something pathological and enabling rather than inclusive, and no one can ever have a hurt feeling, and not realizing, I think, that's why I call it big sister regime rather than big brother regime. This thing that happened that came along with this stuff, that somehow you're bad if you don't like something, or you're bad if you don't embrace it enough. Like if you're not super excited about whatever it is, about polyamory or about trans kids, that there's something wrong with you. Like we're not allowed, like if you don't have the freedom to not like what you don't like, or even to hate, if freedom doesn't mean I can decide what I hate or not, then you're not free. It's this weird type of, like, I don't know what it is. That's why it's called kind of big sister regime or something,
Right.
you know?
Part of it also, at the same time, a lot of it that goes with it is also the propagation of the idea that masculinity is in of itself bad and femininity is in and of itself good, and that the two are opposed to one another rather than the two being complementary to one another, because neither men nor women are perfect. Both have flaws, both, I'm speaking in general terms, both have flaws and both have their areas of strength. And a way that a society is strong is when the two work together to compensate for each other's flaws and bring out the good in the other and in themselves. But now the elites are kind of pushing the gender wars, and while they're doing that, they're also pushing this.
Well, and here I will give, and I will oh my God, help me. Don't come at me, people. My son likes, you know, the tapes. But there's a great truth to what he talks about and what he taps into with men.
Yeah.
And if you're going to pathologize standard masculinity, toxic masculinity, I mean, that's problematic. I like to joke with people like, so I should have asked you, what's your masculinity level today? You know, is it toxic or is it, you know, is it okay? You know, you seem all right, you know.
I'm coming out as non-binary today. That's
there you go. That's right. And the idea that, you know, emasculating men or making that the model, the kind of beta model, the beta hipster soy model, like that's the model of masculinity. That's also good if you're trying to control people.
It is.
You know, that's handy. And the inability that people want to conflate masculinity with the patriarchy, with toxicity, you're just asking to be controlled by another master that has no connection to you. And I'm not saying, of course, obviously it's stupid we even have to say this. Yeah, rape is bad. Domestic violence is bad. crazy stuff, like overt, like the, Harvey Weinstein type of, what all that stuff is. No one's saying that's okay, or that is somehow in the purview of acceptable masculinity. No, but there's something about that. But the idea that if you don't want to have emasculated, you don't want to have all your men be beta or less, not good. And of course, men are also complex. They can have different, modalities of whatever you want to call it. But I think that's also so when he talks about that, it sounds kind of crazy. Like they're trying to emasculate men. They don't want strong men. People need to realize this. Yeah, in a way, it's his brand. And it's easy to dismiss it, but there is some truth to it.
There is.
So I don't know what to make about that. It would be hard to think it's a concerted effort, but it's also we stumbled upon this when we were talking about the I don't know if you heard about the Lily Phillips scandal, the OnlyFans woman from fairly well-to-do family in England.
Is she the one that the 1,000 guy challenge or whatever?
Yeah, she did 100 men in a day, and now she wants to do 1,000. And she did a documentary about it. And people there was a big fight between feminists and between feminists about, is she a victim? Did all these men exploit her? Was there like self-exploitation going on because she made $4 million from her OnlyFans and whatever?
There's all of
that.
But
the point that came out. Yeah, the point that came out, and one of the interesting things that's been in the itching my mind. Is that who benefits from this, the current phase of the quote unquote sexual revolution that we're in? That fewer people are getting married, or they're getting married later. And you have a lot of people, instead of having actual relationships, have these OnlyFans relationships or are on Pornhub and all this stuff. Who benefits from that? Who benefits from weakening the family or the alienation between the sexes at this level? Who benefits from that? I don't think anything good benefits from that. Capitalism, the state.
Yeah. Pimps. And when I say pimps, I'm not talking about some guy in a purple suit wearing a top hat. I'm talking about like shareholders of what's the company that owns MindGeek? The company that owns that, or like, people will say, oh yeah, well she's doing well, she makes 4 million
Tinder, all this
or
stuff,
whatever.
But
It's like, yeah, she gets 4 million, but then like the people who own OnlyFans and they get their cut, how much are they making? Because these individuals, the 4 million, nothing compared to what the owners of the platform are making. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, no, for
That's
sure.
what pimping is.
And of course,
you're getting money.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that they also hold up the people who make a lot of money from OnlyFans. The vast majority of people on OnlyFans don't make that much money.
Yeah,
but they hold
probably
up
make less than I make on Patreon.
Look, and it's like, well, yeah. And then you have I feel sorry for these guys. Yeah, every once in a while you hear this, that someone found out that someone's mom has an OnlyFans account, and then that goes through the middle school, and it's just,
it's really
and
sad.
yeah, I mean, you gotta feed that egg, you gotta make money. And I don't know these people's individual experiences, but people also want to show it like, oh, it's so liberating. You can work from home. And it's not really like prostitution because it's just virtual, but Lily took it to a different level. But,
it's not,
it's just not like,
maybe it's not prostitution in and of itself, depending on how you define it. But the porn industry, and part of that OnlyFans and the whole independent worker model of it is still a decentralized version of it, does serve as the propaganda wing of the broader sex industry.
Well, it commodifies it, it depersonalizes it. It, all that's solid melts into air, all that's sacred is profane, and encourages us to see. It's like, oh, what? Like if I'm going, it's like going for a run with the guy and meeting him on a coffee break to have a quick pump and dump. Same thing. What's the big deal? It's just my body. Got to scratch that itch and got to scratch that itch. Nothing, It's just like, Sex is just, nothing special, nothing particular, nothing. And I'm not a Puritan here. I'm not saying that sometimes you just want to whatever, but
Yeah,
just the larger shift is not a good thing for us.
it's definitely
I
not.
just can't get on board with it. So I'm
Mhm.
not sex work is work, and I'm not pro pornography.
Mhm.
I don't think you can ban it, but it certainly should be regulated, and it should be something that it's okay to kind of give an eye, like,
It takes
you see
a
someone has a porn. If I see like a Pornhub, if I see someone has a Pornhub app on their smartphone, I might be like, dude. And it could be a woman too. I'd be like, all right.
because the
Might be
thing
like,
is,
oh yeah.
you don't get rid of it by
What's your favorite
banning it.
category?
You don't get it's not something that you can just ban out of existence, but you have to address
Mm,
the conditions that give rise to it and its propagation. And that's what people
mm,
are not really trying to do. They don't want to confront that. Because once you confront that, you
mm,
realize, okay, a lot of women do this because, well, of a failing society, a failing economy, among other factors, many
mm,
different things, but it's uncomfortable
mm.
to it's not very comfortable for a society to really reckon with.
Yeah, just look at it broadly. Again, not pointing out particular people, but saying, is this a good thing that you have a thriving OnlyFans economy? That you have more and more men who really seem to struggle actually interacting with actual women. Yeah. But
Mhm.
can do the OnlyFans thing. And then, of course, it's in the business model. You're going to be, obviously, you have to be nice to your OnlyFans clients. But to have
Have you
to get that kind of simulated fix rather than an actual have to go with the more risky business of, trying to have an actual girlfriend or a boyfriend. I just think that I really much like that point that if we can look at it and be like, is this a good thing? Is this a sign of a thriving culture or a good political economy that you have more? And also, I don't know if I'm assuming this is in Taiwan. I hope it's not. But you literally have information pamphlets at universities in the UK, in Holland as well, and in the United States, giving girls tips, like if they're going to do like support themselves partially through sugar daddies or OnlyFans. There's informational pamphlets about how to do it
Yeah, I've
safely.
heard of that. It's not they don't do that at universities here to my knowledge, but those things like sugar daddies, like prostitution, sex industry does exist to like a certain extent over here, sadly, as a part of reality, but it's like kind of
And again, like what we're talking about, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth. There's one thing if these things exist. It's another thing if you want to normalize it
or
and
glorify
kind
it.
of
Right.
glorify it. Like, hey, I mean, I have
They
two girls,
exist.
and I really
You have
hope
to
that they don't have to become OnlyFans to go to college. I mean, I hope that's not the case.
you have to understand them
If
as
they have
social
to, I will not
ills.
be happy about that.
You have to understand them as social ills, and to talk about and to understand it as social ills, you have to get into the factors that give rise to it, and also not just educate and protect young girls from that stuff, but also educate the next generation of boys into not viewing women as commodities. And
Mm.
the whole thing about blaming the Free Palestine, saying I blame porn, a terrible social ill causing so much damage and brainwashing men into treating women as subhuman. Like I said, that is porn does serve as the propaganda wing of the broader sex industry. Many porn actresses in America, like I don't from things that I've read, the the porn industry isn't paying them enough per shoots, from what I understand, for them to really for a lot of them to really survive on it. So what they do is they provide like one-on-one services, and what their like their porn videos serve is like basically advertising and getting their name out. And then because they're like, I guess, a celebrity of sorts, they can charge more money per session. And I do want, since we're on this topic, I do want to suggest are you aware of Andrea Heinz?
Can you show me the book?
Well, she is a
The title of the book.
uh,
Oh no! When men by who? Okay, no, I'm not familiar with that
well,
book.
see, Andrea Heinz, she does have a presence on Twitter, and she is an exited woman herself who was part of the sex trade. She talks about it very candidly, and about like her experiences, and she was actually at one point a brothel owner, not like some huge mansion with a bunch. It was like a 2-room apartment where she worked out of one of the rooms and like rented the other room out. So she's seen like she's seen like the many layers of exploitations in that industry and how it like damages the people involved in it. And she does that sort of advocacy in Canada. So might be someone
And I
that you
want to
might be
say just
interested in.
for
You might
sure.
be interested
No,
in having
no,
her on
I'll
at
put
some
that in
point.
the thing. But I just want to say, because it's easy, of course, to focus on the dudes, on the men in porn, but it also what it encourages girls and women to see themselves as. And
Oh,
I just want to
definitely.
use, yeah, because I remember I was so shocked. My son was he 15? Oh, yeah, I remember that. But he was, and I'm also shocked that he showed me this, but he was showing me how girls were interacting with him. Because I'm not biased, but he's tall, good looking. He's got charisma, and he was showing me what girls were sending to him, and I was like, what? Basically, like offering friends with benefits, sending really provocative pictures and texts, and I'm like, I don't want to judge, but and so then I had to have a conversation with him, like, I'm not a dude. I can imagine if I were you, it'd be hard for me to not take the ladies up on this. But I encouraged him to be like, it's also, your body, you're this, you're that, how are you going to, trying to have, and he's like, oh, I know, mom. But trying to be like, some self-respect is there as well, because it's also, do you want to be just used as like a good time? And then I also said, I go, they could be thinking that if they offer you this, that your feelings about them will change, so you have this interaction, and then it'll become something more than just a friends with benefits or just a whatever. And then their feelings get hurt if that doesn't happen. But of course, at 15, you're trying to explain this to a guy, but I was really shocked. I mean, and it was one of those things like, I'm glad he's sharing this with me, but at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I never would have shared that with my parents when he was 15.
See,
It's
I
like, where
kept
does
things
that come from?
I kept things simple and
15,
safe.
16-year-old girls basically saying, hey, let's hook up.
Well, I kept things simple
I'm
for
like, okay.
my mom by and saved her from these awkward conversations by simply not being cool enough to be given those offers by my classmates when I was his age.
No, I know, and it was just one of those things, and his dad was worthless with the advice, because his dad was a late bloomer. He was not getting these kinds of offers when he was 15 and 16. So I was just like, I mean, a moth to a flame. So I just had to be like the basics. Like, I don't think you're young enough. I don't think you're old enough to be doing this. I can't keep you under lock and key. So think about yourself as well and them, and always use protection. And no is verbal, but also how the people are reacting.
Right.
But
Right.
I hope you don't. I really hope you're not taking lots of people up on these. And then I'm thinking, like, he's saying he's going over to his friend's house to play basketball, but is he going over to?
Well, it seems like
But that's my drama.
But it seems like he's communicative, and he's like not afraid to let you in on his life and know what's going on. So
And I'm
that
sure
should
it's
be a
also like,
fun
hey,
relief.
look at all the ladies after me, like, my God, okay.
Well, yeah, but I
It's
wouldn't.
like,
Even if that were true, I wouldn't like. Okay, well, see, if that were the, I don't see. I don't think it's. I don't know, because if it were me, I don't. I can't see myself showing my mom like those types of messages, and like it'd just be weird.
no. I was like, I was also like, I wouldn't. I'm like, whatever. But anyway, yeah. But now he's 18, and he has a stable girlfriend, and there's been no unwanted pregnancies. So
Happy for him.
Knock on wood. And he would hate if he saw this, but I'm not mentioning anybody's name, and no one knows where he lives, so it's all good. Anywho, let's get through this. Jerry Jacobs, yeah. Let's see. Party for, yeah. Oh yeah. This is that Long Chu. It's a straight guy in the end, which is even stranger, maybe not. I don't know. This is the Long Chu who came out as a trans woman, and got all kinds of accolades. I think he maybe even like nominated for a Pulitzer and was running the New Yorker. And if you look up what Andrea Long Chu says about woman, it's some seriously like dregs of Pornhub sissy porn stuff, but whatever. Let's see. Kushlik. Oddly, it's like negative Simone de Beauvoir. Woman has the absence. It has no positive substance itself, but is only the absence of maleness. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I feel like if I knew the context of when this comment was made in our conversation, it might be a little bit easier to
I
add a
think it was
comment.
about, it was, yeah, sorry. It's Long Shoe, the whole thing about woman is who's fucked, who's penetrated.
Oh.
You know, the anus is also a vagina type of thing. That was, I think, when he talked about this.
Okay.
But yeah, I think
I'm not very
what
well
I can
versed in this more.
Go ahead.
I'm not as like well versed about this stuff from like too much of a philosophical standpoint, but what he's saying over here, what Kushlook says over here makes sense. That it does seem like there is that type of mentality going on.
Well, and you hear that, and this is what's been interesting, I think, about what this has brought to light about how people think about women and women themselves, not just men, but women themselves. Because women will also say, like, well, but if they'll say, like, well, what about guys who've had the full bottom surgery? Is that a problem if they're in women's spaces? It's like, are you saying that a man is a dickless woman? Or no, that a woman is a dickless man? Really? That's what you're saying here. It's like, if you're a guy and you get castrated, you're still a guy. You're just a guy who's been castrated. Or the people in sports want to all talk about the hormone level. Well, what's their hormone level? It's like, we're also not a hormone level. You know, you're not a hormone level. I'm not a hormone level. I have hormone levels. But that's not what makes a man, a woman. So, but yeah, it's a component. Yeah. Right. Or they want to show you these pictures of when you want to say, like, look, you know, do your thing. But again, women's spaces are for women, like, you know, farm fresh, accidental, born that way women. You know, they're not for, you know, the girls' changing room is not for guys who have who claim a gender identity. And then they'll show you some really photoshopped, you know, with the lighting and thing of some like Blair White or some really dolled up lady man. Oh, you would say that she should go in the men's room? I'm like, first of all, so you tell me at what point, so it's also like, we're not just also a costume, you know, it's like, so anyone who puts tits on and makeup is now a woman? Is that what it is? I mean, all of a sudden it's only the surface.
Like, here's the thing. Like, if
it's
here's
crazy.
the thing.
So
like,
I think about that statement.
Like, here's the thing. I think I understand the point that those people are making, but it's more like, well, these people just, if they do look like that in real life, I guess they pass to the point where people would not suspect that they are like what they are, but that doesn't mean it's right for, I don't know. It's why, what gets a person to want to deny who they are and become this sort of like
Mimic.
exaggerated version of a gender, and then do that. I think that's a bigger issue. It's like, I can't say it's a mental illness anymore, but I think that's what it is. And I'm not saying this to be disparaging.
It is.
Yeah. I'm not saying this to be disparaging.
I think so. Sorry, I just wanted to add that when someone, like, for example, to bring out, did you see the Will Ferrell documentary? So his friend for like 30 years who's come out as a woman, and he's now Harper Lee instead of well, anyway. So again with the grooming. So Will Ferrell, being a good guy, he went on so when his friend at 62 years old came out as a, I love this phrase, came out as a woman, because a woman is something you can come out as, whatever. And he decided, okay, well, we've been friends for a long time. So they basically go on a road trip where Will models for us the appropriate response. So you just want to listen, you want to learn, you want to be supportive, and all this stuff. And I'm like, basically what I get from that is that he probably has been cross-dressing in private for a long time. Or maybe they used to have like, maybe they still do like there's certain clubs or certain, places where people will go who like to, I'll just say transvestites. It used to be called transvestites, cross-dressers, whatever.
Yeah.
So basically what he's decided is he wants to do that full time and be able to think that means that he can now, he's a full-time woman now. He's a full-time cross-dresser, which means, I can go in the women's bathroom. I can, I can win women's awards. I can apply for all this stuff. And it's like, and we're encouraging this. And the idea that if you're born this way, it's somehow okay, or if you anything that you like is somehow okay. Well, I like lots of things. I shouldn't do it all the time. And I think what I like is the analogy is nudists. So why is it okay for us to expect nudists to only do their nudisty stuff in their home or at certain beaches or certain resorts or certain clubs where you have the nudist things that nudists do? But there's no movement to be like, why they're oppressed by our heteronormative Western imperial clothing norms. Why should they have to suppress this core aspect of their identity? How terrible that is, you nudist phobe. And that, to me, there's no difference. There's no difference between a nudist demanding to be nude all the time and a guy demanding to be a cross-dresser and regarded as a woman all the time. Except for whatever reason that we've been talking about here, there's money, power, and psychological, all kinds of benefits, whether they be just happy coinkydinks or whatever, that goes through or flows from this gender ideological industry push.
A man dressing as a caricature of a woman is celebrated as brave, but nowadays you get things like a white woman wearing like let's say a white woman wearing a Chinese qipao, like she'll be, a lot of these like white liberals will like out her and cancel her or dogpile her for so-called cultural appropriation, even though like a lot of Chinese people saying that might just be like, that's just a foreign woman appreciating our culture, which is really weird. Why is it that if a white woman wears a qipao, that's cultural appropriation, but if a man dresses up as a caricature of a woman in a very exaggerated way, it's kind of like very pornified. That's not appropriation. That's like him being true to himself. I don't get it.
I don't either. And what I also don't get is people know that we are talking sense, which is why they have to get so mad.
Like if you can if you can accept gender ideology, then why can't you accept
Rachel Dolezal? Yeah, it's like you need to go educate yourself, you transphobe. You need to go listen to some trans women. You need to go on a field trip with Will and Harper. You need to really look at why you're being so mean to these people who are just trying to live their authentic self. Like when Vice President Harris sent Dylan Mulvaney a letter congratulating him on his second year of girlhood.
Yeah, like the same people.
And if we have any questions about this, we're bad people. Don't you notice that elephant in the room, you bad person?
The same people celebrating gender ideology are the same people who canceled Rachel Dolezal.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of all outs, speaking of people who, I mean, I don't know if he was trying to yank my chain or if he really believed this, but it was before October 7th. That's how I chronologe my life now. I was having some internet exchange with Ben Burgess and another guy from This Is Revolution. Yeah, there's Ben Burgess, and there was a guy. Oh, he's the guy who's, I don't know if he's a Kurdish dude, but anyway, they all and they were going around and around, and I said, okay, I go, well, I was trying to the easiest ways on Twitter to point out contradictions, and I brought up the Rachel Dolezal thing. I'm like, so why can't if you can transition from male to female or female to male, why can't I transition from white to black or black to white?
They probably called you a racist.
Like, oh, well, no, but they're like, oh, and they're trying. Oh, it's just. We actually said there's more difference between a white person and a black person than a man and a woman. They literally said this shit to me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it's so crazy to me. It's like every part of my body is female. Every part of your body is male. You want to look at me, you could actually do, if you want to do biological stuff, there probably would be some people who black Americans and white Americans, like I could have more genetically in common with them than some other white people, maybe in like, you know, I don't know, Iceland or wherever. So it's like, what? It's like,
No, the thing is, it's really weird because these people will say like race is a social construct, but then these people, it's their obsession with race is very odd because like whiteness in itself does not give meaning to anything. Just like yellow skin does not give meaning to much. It's the civilizational culture. That's why, like, for example,
it's
white
attached to it.
nationalism.
It becomes a signifier. Yeah.
Yeah. Why the way that like people, white nationalists will say that, oh well, you know, white people all throughout the world need to unite, white Americans, like Russians, Slavs, whatever. But the thing is, like, an American white person and a Slavic person from Russia are very civilizationally different, whereas a white American and like an American of any other skin color are much more culturally similar in other aspects. But it's this sort of racial obsession. And I will say, leftists who say they're anti-racist are also in a way they're I call them race essentialists. You know,
they're racialists. They're anti-racist racists.
They are. So
they're
that whole
essentializing
rhetoric,
stuff. So what used to be, let me see if you picked up on this. So especially the real, like, you know, Ibram X. Kendi and that, what's that lady's name? White fragility, and they kind of symbolize this. But there's also people who you get this list, and I can't remember what organization it was, but it was crazy. So what 10 years ago would have been considered a racial stereotype, now is not a stereotype. It's something you know, critical to blackness. And if you have an issue with it, or judge them on that the way you would judge white people who have a different idea about punctuality, then somehow that's racist. It's just like, it's horseshoed. So there's stuff that used to be like, you know, you're just like, what? So it's not that black people are, you know, aren't as concerned about being punctual as white people. That's not just a stereotype, because obviously I'm sure there's black people who were very almost anally retentive about being on time, and ones who could give a shit whatever, just with any other category. But now that's become like an essentialist thing. That if you can't respect the fact that some people, that black people don't care about that punctuality is an oppressive norm for them, whereas it's not for white people, then you have some sort of problem. I'm like, what? And also, it's just so ridiculous because one of the things that, just as an anecdote, I'm sharing all my family stuff now. My mom is always late. It used to drive me crazy, especially before I had a car as a kid, because I'd always be the last one picked up. She'd always be late, and it was always like no big deal. Whereas, you know, I like to be on time. That's in the same family, so clearly that has nothing to do with the you know, my bright whiteness.
Socialization. Yeah, it's, if anything, it's socialization and not like genetic. These people make it seem like it's
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, this is when we were talking about the forced sterilizations and the way how I talked about this gender ideology being like their way of promoting sterilization in a way that's not as forced, where people kind of voluntarily sign up. But Kushluk does make a point saying that the way that it targets certain people, especially like autistic people, autistic children, and victimizes them. And
no, there are certain groups of. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just saying, like, to anybody watching, I'm not saying like I have the answers to everything. What I'm saying is, in a good faith society, we should all have the right to talk about, discuss, and question these things and ask questions instead of just shutting down all conversation related to this, like a certain side of this argument likes to do. Or
pretend that we don't know things that we know. Like anorexia can run in groups of like girls are more susceptible to what they like to call social contagions. Not that this isn't being this is a social contagion and a social engineering. It's both. But the girls are more susceptible to that. They'll make like pregnancy packs, and you have anorexia that will spin around. And so this idea that it's not surprising, and people know this. It used to not be controversial that if you saw a trans spike in tweens and teen girls, that was gonna present and be different than in tween and teen boys. But we're not supposed to know that anymore, you know. Or we're not supposed to notice that, hey, a lot of these people, especially the younger people who want to go to gender clinics, they seem to be gay or unsure, or they seem to be on the autistic spectrum, or there seems to be sexual trauma or depression or other things in the background. You're not supposed to notice that either. And if you bring it up, you're bad. It's like, what the frick? And again, the things that they can get people to sign off on when they shroud it in niceness and kindness, very sinister.
Yes.
You know, to the point that you want to talk about castration and having healthy, functional body parts removed as being progressive in healthcare. It's like, okay. Oh, it's so crazy. Oh, let's see. Let's see. This is also eugenics thing. I'd say, I think this is when you were talking about North Korea, maybe. I'd say not super different. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was talking about how the thing I was saying was, North Korea does not have laws in its books specifically talking about transgenderism, just like how America does not have laws about foot binding, because foot binding would never took on as a social phenomenon in America like it did in the Qing dynasty in China.
Or like, what was that thing that was, there was also that thing that was overdone, although it does happen, the sati, when the widow would be burned with the husband in some parts of India. That, I'm not saying that didn't happen, but of course, you know, how often it happened, I don't know. But yeah, that has been banned for a long time now. But you wouldn't find it necessary to ban throwing the widow on the funeral pyre in certain other places that didn't have that.
Because laws address actual things,
practice.
just like there were no laws about there were no laws related to automobile traffic before enough cars were on the roads that that these problems arose.
Or sexual harassment when most jobs that were outside the home were by men. Then you didn't have the sexual harassment law. And of course, and I should be specific, this is also class-based. When middle class and elite women started to work in professions, that was what pushed for sexual harassment legislation. I'm sure that you know, obviously that I want to recollect that I understand that the kind of bourgeois domesticity woman working all in the home was something that wasn't putting to the side whether it's desirable or not. It wasn't something that was an option for lots of people. But yeah, same. I think same type of thing, because it hadn't been elevated, politicized in that way. And why would foot binding be that way in outside of China? Although there's the FMG, before when genital mutilation was bad, before it was a trans right. When you did have certain immigration, when you had a certain amount of immigration, I remember and I don't know how much this was actually what they call like a moral panic, and how much of it was actually happening. But you'd hear of stories of maybe Somali women and other families who are in the UK or in Holland or in the United States, that when their daughters got to a certain age, would want to take them back to their home country for this procedure. And I don't know how often that happened. And so then you had this push to be like, okay, well, we don't want that to happen. Which I also don't want that to happen. I'm against genital mutilation, whether it be for religious reasons or for transgender is also kind of religious, or for any reason. I'm against genital mutilation. Even when people ask for it. I think even just,
Mhm.
and here's another thing, you get this. I'm sure you've got this. Well, what's it to you if they want to have it done? I go, so now Marxists are hyper individualists now. You know,
I
like
hate that. I hate
anarcho-capitalists,
that mentality
libertarians.
because
Like if someone wants something, then they should be able to do it. And it's great that there's a market for it. You know, if people want to have their boobs cut off, if girls want to have their boobs cut off, they should have their boobs cut off. Why? Why do you care?
yeah, I really don't like that
I'm like,
logic when it
no,
comes
why
to
don't you
maintaining a
care? I'm right for caring.
because when it comes to like maintaining a society, you know, the whole it takes a village to raise a child, but it also the society that we are surrounded in impacts ourselves, impacts our families, impacts our children. So of course we are right to care about social phenomena that are perhaps outside of our like immediate surroundings, but it's not just the whole like, oh, you can just everyone can do whatever they want. That's not a recipe for a healthy society.
Well,
Yes,
and on
it is
that
the
note, no, go ahead, finish. I thought you were done.
I was about to respond to this comment. It is an anti-materialist ideology premised on the most narcissistic individualism. They
Yeah.
take advantage of people with those personality traits.
Well, and also again, this is not just for Marxists, but you know, it's for everybody. The idea that the government, most political parties, all the major institutions in society, all of a sudden pretending that sex doesn't matter, that it's assigned at birth rather than recorded, like that's no big deal. It's like, what?
It has huge social implications.
Are we all avatars now? I mean, are we just gonna like, you know, it's like, yeah, if we get uploaded to the Matrix, then it doesn't matter. We can just pick whichever one we want. We're not there yet. I hope we don't get to be there. But that's just amazing to me. So it's like the state deciding that a man can be a woman and then you can be punished if you don't go along with it. That's not a big deal.
It is a big
How
deal.
is that not a huge deal? Ooh. That's why I say gender board. People don't like it, but I'm like, what else to say? It's like, what? You wake up and 75% of the people have been assimilated into gender ideology, and there's the rest of us like looking at each other like, am I insane? What's going on here?
And over here, we're at the part. The next comments coming up. It was when we were talking about the draft memo and the sterilization and Planned Parenthood. So Jenny Lynn's comment about how so many poor women were sterilized in the U.S. That's it's related to that topic, and that is true. That's part of the eugenics with the Planned Parenthood stuff. Many poor women, especially women in Black communities, they targeted them.
And Black people. It wasn't just white people targeting Black communities. Again, there's the talented 10th. There was the you know, the first batch of people that went through the historically Black universities or whatnot. They also were concerned about what was going on with the proletariat and the lumpen. It wasn't just whitey.
Yeah, I mean, eugenics
no one wants to talk about that either.
Eugenics were like kind of like the mainstream at that point in history, I believe. It was on the Soviets actually fought against it.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense if we have this thing about improvement and progress, then yeah, it's like, well, of course it's going to get into to use a more vulgar materialist term, breeding practices. You know, and that kind of makes sense. And I mean, if we want to get really really crazy, I mean, we are mammals. Yeah, and there's horse breeders, there's dog breeders, there's these, you know, there's people who are trying to do things with the cross-pollination of different plants and all that. They're trying to create either like a certain aesthetic or a stronger variety. And that's very pharmacon. Yeah, that's very like, you know, very dicey when you start going down that path. But what do you have now? And you have richer people who can go and say, okay, I want a baby. I want it to be a boy. I want him to have blue eyes, and I want to screen all these fertilized embryos to see who's going to have the least likelihood of, having a high IQ or not having, a certain less propensity for certain things. That's also eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always going to be a part of society, however small. It's how we acknowledge it and deal with it and talk about it. That's the difference. And right now, it's just kind of like, what's an individual thing? And if somebody wants to do that, that's fine. And why shouldn't gay men be able to hire one from Ukraine to at a baby farm to have their baby and then have it fly over, and then they can, have their and make sure that it's the right kind, first you have all the embryos first, get the right one. Well, what's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. I mean, no one would take advantage of that. Of course not.
Absolutely nobody, right?
I mean, the surrogacy thing, that's another thing. We get you're fascinating and great. I want to see if we can go through here so we can wrap up, because I know it's late in the evening for you, and at some point my children are going to descend. Let's see. I think we've covered most things. Let's see.
Let's go through the comments.
Trump divorcing LGBTQ was a good move because he's saying, yeah. I mean, and I don't care, and I literally don't care. I don't care what Trump's motives were. His executive orders on this stuff, well, totally behind them. Totally behind them. On this issue.
Pretty much how I feel. Yeah.
And I'm not going to cry for U.S. aid either. That's a separate but related thing.
Oh, I was really happy about the U.S. aid thing. It was so hilarious seeing like all these people I hated just like crying about losing their funding for their work. I'm just like, wow, great.
Well, and all these people, and it's like, and they're probably the same people who told the people in the Rust Belt in the States to learn to code. I'm like, well, you can learn to code. You can learn to do AI. I'm sure you'll be fine. Get an OnlyFans, Uber, make it work, yo.
There's a Jenny Lin comment over here that I agree with. I want to shout her out real quick. She says, I don't give a fuck if people want to deconstruct gender all day long, but just don't force all these theories onto everyone else at the barrel of a gun.
Yeah, exactly. Like, or else. Like, it'd be terrible if you lost that job of yours, or it'd be terrible if I smeared you online. It'd be terrible if, it's crazy. We don't call them the pronoun mafia for nothing. And their friends are useful idiots. Let's see. Yeah, no, not a lot of people being thrown off anything we see in the media, and I know that you know this, Jenny Lynn. Anything you see in the media about anything that even brushes by Western imperial interests, you have to be skeptical of. It's like, I'm going to assume that's bullshit until proven otherwise. I mean, it's very difficult. Yeah, let's see. The false promise of equality promoted in the name of a system of hegemonic control around the U.S. does not mean that the concept of a better society itself is bad. This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not against improvement, and yeah.
It's just always being conflated. If you're against this, that means you're against progress.
And also the conflation of change and progress.
Right. True.
Well,
exactly.
It's new, so it must be good. It's like, let's remember, I know that Keith Chesterton, I know that he was a conservative dude, but the Chesterton fence analogy is always really good. Mm-hmm. Before we tear this down, let's take a moment to think about why it's there. Let's see. The West always used shit as war, competition, or conflict. Yeah. Ironically, the wokes are toxically masculine. That's true, Jenny Lynn. Give me a.
Once you anger them,
I tell you. Yeah, that's true. In the crack.
Male rage.
Actually, I grew up. Female rage. Yeah, female. They have those male women with the PMS. You know, you got to be careful of them. They're very, very emotional during their time of the month. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this is also true. This idea that that the left owns appropriate, fantastic masculinity is laughable. That's a nonpartisan thing.
Personal
Let's see.
privilege.
And- yeah. I have a lot of America, love it or leave it, MAGA, relatives, and not one of them would ever think it's a good idea to put a man in a woman's prison, or to think that sports should be gender neutral. They haven't done that. So, 6 one way, half dozen the other, but not really at this point. Let's see. Kuchlik, I tend to think the new gender stereotype subjectivity of the liberal capitalist left is an idealization of the needs of their economic base. Probably. Oh, on that note, actually, we're gonna have to cut it off now because I hear banging on the front door, so someone's forgot their key. So they can wait for a while because it's not my fault they forgot their key and it's not raining. So this is again, I can say no, I'm not gonna run just because they forgot their key and are banging on the door. Anyway, they're 11 and 12, they'll be all right. So I want to thank you very much. This has been great. I want to put the comment down so people have your thing. How do I do that? Oh my God, StreamYard. You can tell I need to have a coffee. So thank you so much. Check out his stuff on www.stxy.show.
We'll have links
he has another
to my social
website
media in there.
Okay. And anything else you want to say or plug before we sign off?
No, just if you find the stuff that I say insightful, I'm usually I was not too prepared over today. I was just kind of here to have a little chat. But if you find if you find that you want to follow some of my work, then feel free to follow me on Twitter. It is at not Xiangyu. You can find the link on this website over here. Just click on the little Twitter icon or X icon.
Yeah, and also in the video comments, in the video description on Rumble and YouTube, I have your details, and in the tweet that I put out also has your X account. Do follow him. He's fantastic. Isn't he fantastic? Oh my God. I love this. I could go on, but I have to get kids and have coffee because my mental capacity is waning. I'm seeing some of these good comments. I'm seeing some of these comments and I'm like, yeah, Simone Beauvoir, I can't do that now. But we did pretty good. Anyway, thank you so much. It's been fantastic. This is the full stream. I will cut it down into bite-sized morsels. So look for that. And we'll schedule having you back on to do a deep dive into Taiwan. I would love to do that.
All right, excellent. Let's do that.
Great. Yay! I have another unicorn. Okay, thank you so much. See you next time, everybody. Like, subscribe, share, check him out. I'm running to the finish line because they're still knocking and, I can only keep him out there so long. Right. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.